Rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. Apologize for being a little tardy this evening. We do have a public hearing that was scheduled for 7:10 that we must first go into. You have to open it? Joe, do you have a motion to open the public hearing?
No,
Is there a motion?
No. Mr. Chairman, no motion. I would recommend that you open the public hearing and I can introduce the subject to the board.
Public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I move to open the public hearing to consider sale of town-owned property.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Valiakonis?
Good evening, board members, ladies and gentlemen. The board, as part of the board's policies, we annually conduct a review of municipally owned land. And typically what we do is we identify parcels that the board has identified as being surplus. Your board policies require you to hold a public hearing, and this has been an advertised public hearing. We've sent out notification to all abutters and anyone that's previously expressed an interest in the property, so those individuals have been given an opportunity to attend this evening's meeting. If you would refer to the green sheet in your packet, which says 2012 town-owned parcels for review, you'll note that there are 3 blocks of properties. The first 2 are items that have the title new after them, and those are located on Francis Street and Devons Road. Those are properties which the board has received letters of interest from residents. The second batch of properties are properties that the board identified and offered for sale in September of 2011, at which time there were no indicated interest, so we bumped those up for sale this evening.
Mr. Valiakonis, I think at this time I'd inquire whether or not there's anyone here concerning this particular item. If not, I'd like to see if the board will close it for now, if we can resume later on, and we could deal with our other business. Is there anyone here regarding sale of town-owned land? Seeing none, hearing none.
Mr. Chairman, move to continue this public hearing until after consideration of all other agenda items prior to the town administrator's report and all the new business.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone here for public comment? Beautiful. Item 4, discuss Hillview Capital with Hillview Commission. Mr. Stack is here. Here to come forward and discuss goings on over at Hillview.
I'm assuming that it's about the bond issue for October?
No, actually, this is an item I actually asked to be placed on the agenda. And then Mr. Stack is going to be here to help support maybe some of the things that I say, if I get something wrong. Then if we want to continue it on to have a further discussion about, in particular, capital entry that we have to vote on tonight, that we can maybe do that as well.
You, Michael, know what you're talking about?
I might. I'm not sure. I'm willing to discuss anything.
Very good.
But we can get the bond item out first. We were looking to bond $400,000. $300,000 for capital improvement on the building. As you know, we have a potential new tenant. Nothing's been signed yet. And we were looking for someone to come in to invest some of their own money, and in doing that, we'd be willing to bond some money. Right now, we're at a difference on what those numbers were. So we're looking to bond $300,000 now for the building and $100,000 for the golf course to improve the 7th fairway and to buy a fairway mower, which is around $48,000. So that's what that would be.
Any questions, board members? Mr. Messeri?
Do we know what our current bonded debt is and what our debt payment is for Hillview debt total?
This year, Bob?
Well, let's look at current year and what it would be next year.
Current year.
Without the borrow.
Well, the current year would be
Okay, I understand that, George.
Actually, the town does have enough. 487,569 would be for this year, I believe.
This year's bonded debt.
Yeah, then the following year would be 396, and it drops off 352, and it starts dropping down
What's the
dramatically.
first year's number again, George?
494.
494?
Yeah, I believe it's 494. Might even be lower, Bob, let me line this up.
George, I thought you said
Yeah,
487.
487.
487,
487.
and
Yeah.
then 3,
390.
396 and
Yeah,
352.
396, then 352, and it keeps dropping until eventually in 2025, it's $20,000.
and the $400,000 you want to borrow can be borrowed over what period of time, Greg?
Again, it's $300,000, and if it's facility improvements, you can borrow up to 25 years.
And the rest is probably 5-year type.
Equipment can be borrowed for 5 years. However, in this instance, what we would look to do is try to fund that equipment from cash versus borrowing. Typically, things like lawnmowers and such, we try to pay for with cash.
Cash from where?
Hillview will have retained earnings that'll
Okay,
be
so it's
certified.
coming out of
We'll
there.
try to fund it from retained earnings.
And the $100,000 is for,
We were
Seventh
looking to,
fairway.
yeah, it was going to be to bond a fairway mower and a improvement of the 7th fairway.
It's about a 50,000 split between the two.
Yeah, assuming we can't pay for it, that's why they're both needed, you know, they're both needed.
Right, but if you guys have the retained earnings to do it, you're gonna pay for it.
More than likely, yeah.
If we can afford to pay cash, that's the preference.
Yeah.
But we get, it's going to be approved at town meeting for either or. It'll authorize the borrowing,
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
but in your budget, you've also allowed for the expenditure
Oh,
of the
yeah.
funds. Right, so it's
Yeah.
already allocated in the capital,
Yeah.
in the budget that you presented for this
Yeah,
year.
it would be, yeah.
Take it, but if the play is down, you still need to address it, so we'll be borrowing the funds to do it. That's how we've been
and
doing
the
it.
funds you're talking about are the $100,000.
Right, the $100,000.
Yes,
So
yeah.
the 300 definitely needs to be.
Correct.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, that's the commitment we made to,
Before interest.
Yes, I understand.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Anything further?
No?
These capital items?
FinCom have a question or anything? Input?
FinCom? Don, Evan, anything?
You okay?
As presented here?
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you. We're all set on those now, I guess is
Yeah,
another
I
item
just-
or?
Just one item I wanted to have a quick discussion about, and I had actually asked the commission and George if I could bring it up tonight and run something by you for consideration. As George talked about earlier, they're in discussions right now with Mr. Lee taking over the ballroom, and part of his initial bid had an approach for an investment that he's going to bring to the table, as well as a matching investment from the Hillview Commission. As the numbers are coming in, the numbers are obviously a little higher than I think what people expected. But through the course of this process, we also had one of the HVAC units in the top of Hillview go down. So when you talk about this $300,000 and you have an investment that the Mr. Lee's going to bring to the table, now you've got to cut out $130,000 roughly for this HVAC unit that really was never planned off initially when this whole bidding process started. That's a pretty big chunk of money. So they cannot borrow any more than $300,000. The work that needs to get done, if we really want to make an investment in the ballroom to really make it possible for whoever takes it over to be successful for the long term, we need to make some of these capital investments in the building. So my thought, my request to you for consideration, and I know it could be challenging, because we've already put their payment in lieu of taxes in our budget for this operating year, but I would ask you to consider waiving the payment in lieu of taxes for FY 2013 and see how things go. And if worst case scenario, we'd have to take it out of free cash to make up the funds. But you know, the way, if you look at the way 2012 turned out and how we've exceeded by about $1 million our revenue number, I think we're pretty conservative in our budgeting that we could, it's a risky thing, but I'm asking for you to take the risk of waiving the $110,000 so they could turn around and use it to invest in that HVAC unit and towards this whole plan to get the ballroom back up to speed so we can go ahead and continue with the functions under new management.
I guess, a couple of questions. When did the HVAC unit go down?
It would be to replace the,
No, when did it go
When did
down?
it fail? When did it break down?
When did it break down?
the unit broke down
Thank you.
a few months ago, but it's more than that. It's that, you know, the potential tenant, and I don't like to use the name because he's still a potential tenant,
Right.
and with some of the changes that he's been facing with, he's still a potential tenant, so.
Okay. Oh, that's-
But his plan was to basically redo the hall. He has tremendous plans. The plans are great. And it requires a whole new air conditioning, heating system into the building, which means you will rip everything out from the ceiling that Bob used to crawl out onto on the roof. And those units would be replaced, and they'd have to cut in and cut all the way down to what would become the old pub, and put in all new venting and everything else. So that was a price we got of $150,000.
Okay, so this work takes into account a potential new tenant.
Yes, yeah, and that's phase one.
Yeah.
Phase one, okay.
All right.
And he has all these other plans that would be phased in over time, if he agrees to it.
If you didn't have a new tenant, what would you do in terms of that HVAC unit that had gone down? What would be the plan at that point?
Well, we would have to have been faced with whoever the tenant was, looking at the building and deciding what they would like to do with it.
Well, you'd have to do something because it's non.
Well, it's one unit.
Yeah, it's
That's
one
one unit, but we're not talking one unit, we're talking about a whole new system. Yeah, with what we're looking
But
at.
one of the units is down. We would have had to replace it.
Yeah,
anyway, regardless.
that's probably a given, but that's not gonna be $150,000, so.
Mr. Valiakonis?
I had wished Liz would be here because she's gone back to her office, but there are two challenges that we face in trying to do what's being recommended. The first is we need an appropriation. So first and foremost, we don't have an appropriation for that money right now. So there needs to be a request submitted for whether it's $100,000 or $150,000 for an appropriation to be able to accomplish what Mr. Stack is stating. The second item is the $110,000 in revenue is built into our revenue forecast. So we have a balanced budget that was adopted at town meeting. We need to do one of two things, and there are significant challenges based upon what I've just heard this evening. Number one, we need to identify $110,000 in new revenue so we can balance our budget, because we won't have a balanced budget when that money is taken away. Or we need to identify $110,000 in cuts. And I think it's extremely unfair to go through and adopt a budget and then all of a sudden have something like this come in. I would suggest that perhaps Hillview look at other ways of funding this, but it's not quite as simple as it seems. It's a bit of a challenge. The obstacle is we can't set our tax rate without a balanced budget. So it's not an issue that we can address in the spring. It's an issue that has to be addressed at this town meeting. It has to be addressed before we set the tax rate in November. So that's really the key date, is before we set the tax rate, we need to have all our revenues nailed down 100%. And I'm sure, as Liz will tell you, we have not identified a source of $110,000 in revenue. If the board wishes to fund it from free cash, then that's perhaps an alternative, but it's difficult to reassign that payment in lieu of tax money to accomplish what's being suggested this evening.
So another question. So the $300,000 was contemplated to put into the function facility. That doesn't include this HVAC system.
No, and there could have been some misunderstanding on our part with the potential tenant when he presented, the matching funds. That sort of, I don't recall hearing about that. So that became an expense that went beyond. So instead of having $600,000 to do what he wants to do, he's going to now have, $450,000.
Right, so that's how it's going to be dealt with if, it sounds like what
Absolutely.
Mr. Prisco's proposing we can't do. So that's how the HVAC
Yeah.
unit is going to be replaced.
Yeah,
Well, you could.
Could.
We could take it from free cash. If, again, looking at it from a big picture perspective, if we really want to make an investment in the ballroom to make it worthwhile for whoever takes it over, so they can actually accomplish and increase the revenues and be able to put on more functions, to make it more user-friendly. We can all make an investment in it together, and all have a little skin in the game. Hillview's putting up 300. Whoever takes it over is gonna put up some dollars. I don't wanna say exactly what that is, because we're not there yet. And then I was looking at the town, put in a little bit. That's if we have a commitment to the ballroom. We don't have to. I'm just bringing it up, throwing it out there for discussion.
Which is, I had a disagreement with the
Right,
town.
Yeah, is it-
That was presented, but I'm very vehement about going to town taxpayers. There's never been a penny spent there. I don't plan to have it spent while I'm still on the board. But it brings me to a greater point, if I can speak to it.
Sure.
And it's the in lieu of tax payments. I've had numerous meetings with Greg, meetings with Steve, I've had meetings with Mike, and Bob knows that the in lieu of tax payment is a voluntary payment. We designed that back in 1987 when we were organizing as the Hillview Commission, as the study committee. And I guess, this year we made it, last year we didn't. And I know there was great angst over the fact that we owed $60,000, to a point where people were coming back to me saying, well, people at Town Hall are upset that. So they were looking for the additional $60,000 this year. And I thought, well, wait a minute. $60,000, by the time the turf field is paid off, we'll have committed and paid off $17.5 million in funding in bonds without a penny of taxpayer money. And I thought, well, wait a minute. It doesn't make sense that this money keeps getting put into the budget, and I've been fighting for years to have it out of your budget. How you deal with it, I don't know. But I thought tonight coming over, So if you had 110 this year and you got the 60 from last year, that's 170. So we can only give you 60. Now you got another 100 we owe you. And as time goes on, just think of how many people have moved into town since we took the Hillview, since River Park has been built. The turf field, the short period of time, how many people? So everybody, it's always been there. And somewhere down the road, if we don't take care of this, there's going to be a group of selectmen, a group of people in the finance committee, a group of people at the commission who are going to say, okay, well, you now owe $650,000, and it'll bankrupt the enterprise. And then they'll become a burden to the taxpayers, because when all is said and done, the taxpayers own everything. We just administer to it, try to have good business acumen, and go from there. But it's a slippery slope we're on. I've been there for 25 years, and I'm not going to be there another 25. And I like to see that slippery slope just kind of level off, so that there's a reality to it. And it goes back to being a true voluntary payment. And when you have $110,000 and we can pay it, we pay it. If you get 50, we haven't had a hurricane since Hurricane Bob, the no-name storm in '91. We shut down for a day with that storm we just had. We lost 7 major trees. The place was shut down. 0 income. So if you get a major hurricane or something and you do damage over there, that's why we have the money we have in our reserve account to take care of a year's debt. For whatever reason, and the townspeople can decide what they want to do with the property. We still have lots on Center Street set aside for development if the townspeople get into a bind and have to do stuff like that. It was really given with a lot of thought, but I do see it weakening with this in lieu of tax payment, especially from the feedback I got from last year. It's a payment, so it's a voluntary payment. In reality, we don't have to pay anything. That's how it was designed. In fact, general government's not really supposed to benefit from the Hillview account. As somebody said to us in the commission, well, why don't we just go buy a fire engine? I said, well, you can't. Yeah, but in reality you are. Excuse me. But in reality you are, because you're given that $110,000 in lieu of taxes. We don't have a problem with paying, but there are days that you're going to get 10%, 20%, 100%, but it's not always going to be there. Ever. 2 years ago, there was so much rain, we were so far down, and we ended up giving $60,000, and that was a stretch. So I'd like to somehow come to some terms with this, It's not what I came over to talk about. I thought I was coming to talk
No,
about
but
it.
you generally would take advantage of the opportunity, and you have again.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I haven't been in front of a pulpit for a long time, so, you know.
No, George has been extremely consistent over all the years.
Yeah, it really is. It's a very fragile enterprise, even after 25 years, you know? It's very fragile. You know, just think, you think $500,000 in reserves is a lot of money, but that goes so fast if we had a disaster, you know? We have all these responsibilities to do, and so I'd like to have them rethink that, but I didn't mean to jump on your mind.
No, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
that's one of the reasons why I brought this forward tonight.
Yeah.
Was the long conversation I had with Mr. Stack. After a long discussion, I said, well, let me bring it forward, requesting it this way, and then maybe see where we can kind of end up with it, because I'm not saying I disagree with his approach and what he's saying. I'm a short timer, it's new to me, so I really don't know how, or what the right thing is, how to respond to it, but.
And I do know there are things not specifically presented to me, but, you know, talking to Rita and things that they have plans for down the road, and they come to us for funding, and that's really the area, you know, of our responsibility to, you know, take people's dreams and ideas, and if we can fund them. Once we fund them, they're on their own, but up until that day, you do those things, so I don't know.
Mr. Messeri?
I spent a lot of time on the Hillview Commission, and I have probably some of my own conservative ideas about it. It is an enterprise. It's been basically a great thing for the town. Most of the money that's been earned has been turned into assets. You know, if you look around town between the fields, the park, even the parking lot across the street is an asset that wasn't there originally, and it's all been done by the efforts of volunteers who have done a fantastic job. I think that on the payment of lieu of taxes, that was something the commission set up initially. There were, in the early days, those payments weren't made because they wanted to build up their reserve account to deal with what George explained as the bad year. Then they started paying it, and then they had, at one time, surplus had built way up, and there wasn't any demand for other projects. And we had hit, I think it was in the early 2000s, that economic downturn, and they actually paid back additional payment in taxes, but it wasn't requested by the town.
No.
It was done as a result of a vote of the commissioners. So I think I like the idea of that payment in taxes being, you know, something in their charter to consider every year, and I hope that they're able to pay it. I also think that if the situation is such, early notice helps the community, because we are using it in the budget, especially in this economic downturn, George. With respect to what you're trying to do with the hall, you know, I know that the rent that we only receive rent from the hall, is that correct?
Rent and utilities,
Well, yeah, and
and a percentage over
right.
X amount of
So
dollars.
it's X number of dollars, and I guess, you know, I'd like to look at the numbers from the point of view of what we gain from it in revenue versus what kind of investment we're making, and look at it over a period of time to say, are we going in the right direction? Maybe you ought to rethink what we're doing. You know?
Well, that thought's been there. This, you know, it's been, you know, going back and forth, and you don't mind return on investment, but there's a thought that it's a town asset, it's tired, it needs an upgrade. You need to bring it into the 21st century, especially with the codes. There's all kinds of issues, I'm sure. Once you put the first piece of wood out of that place, you know, all the new codes come in, the fire department, the Board of Health, and everything else. So, I mean, I found out the other day that you have to have all your kitchen stuff on wheels. I didn't know that, because I told him that anything that was bolted to the floor we owned, and he said, well, there's nothing, because now there's new codes. So, all of those things. But we went through that extensively, and there's a definite difference of opinion on what should be done with the building, even within the commission. You know, and some people see it as an asset that, again, should be something that town's extremely proud of. He's talking about changing the facade and everything else, so. So we're trying to come to some type of mutual understanding.
Steve, did you have something?
Yeah, you know, my guess is that based upon what the investment the commission is looking to make, plus the annual carrying cost just for operating the building, and my guess is the new rent structure right now isn't going to kick up for the first few years. So it really isn't going to be a winner for the commission as far as carrying itself and paying its own way. That being said, it is an asset, as both George pointed out, that you know, we have an obligation to maintain and help invest in. If we're going to have that type of a facility in there, and as you say, maybe we're going down the wrong path, but if we're going to have that type of facility and we've committed to that, then we need to assist in maintaining it, because we don't want it to be an eyesore. We don't want, you know, violations of any codes or all the rest. So it's at a point, and Bob, you know it as well as anybody, we sat there for a dozen years. I mean, forever sticking your fingers in the dike trying to patch
I
something up.
told them at the meeting, you know, because some people think we've never spent a penny on it, but we spent $1.2, $1.3 million on that building, and where is it? You don't see it. It's up on the roof. It's on the side.
But as far as what's being proposed,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, as far as what's being proposed, I'm opposed to any taxpayer dollars going into the facility. I think it's still capable of supporting itself. I think that, as we talked about during our last budget season, the last few budget seasons, I've been bringing up the payment in lieu of taxes as some source of revenue that we should not be looking at and budgeting every single year. Again, it's something that's in a state of flux, and depending upon the weather, you know, will determine whether or not it can be made. Yet, year after year, we continue to budget it, and I think this is another opportunity that George is taking advantage of to point out that we shouldn't be doing that, and I don't disagree at all. We shouldn't be. So if we're going to be making this type of adjustment and want to give them the revenues to address the situation, then we do need to address our budget and our budget forecast by earmarking $110,000 for free cash to balance our budget, not for them. And then on their budget, we'll need an amendment at the October town meeting authorizing them to either borrow or expend an additional $150,000 to address the issue on top of what they're looking for. And then let the commission manage it based upon their cash flow, along with the finance department and town administrator. So I'm opposed of mixing the funds and getting the taxpayers' dollars into there. It's been 25 years that it's worked very well and served the community well, and as Bob pointed out, the assets that have come out of it are tremendous. And we're not at the point where we're not even close. It's not a crisis stage. There's nothing going on there that can't be managed within the enterprise itself. I think that's the way we should move forward. And if the commission feels as though this $150,000 needs to be expended, then okay, we'll make the adjustment at town meeting. You just tell us how to do it. Either I'll authorize borrowing, an additional borrowing of $150,000, or adjust the budget so that from a cash standpoint you can do it too if the revenues are there.
Yeah, well, I think that keeping the taxpayers separate from the Hillview is important because, again, that's a real slippery slope.
Yep.
And I think it's also important that we understand that the potential tenant had this vision and had a vision of us making a greater commitment to bonding than there actually is. So we're kind of working on, staging it in. And the reason we put it out went to town meeting, got it for 10 years with a 5-year option was that somebody would come forward and invest in the building, which he's willing to do. And I suspect over years he'll invest more. Might not be as much or what we see, but he'll be spending money there, believe me. So that's where we're at. The topic of the in lieu of tax payment, we did discuss it. Really haven't had a full discussion with the board. It was favored to. I mean, how can you not? I mean, if somebody wants to give you that kind of money, why not? And we just put it back into the building. But we know there's more to do than that. We know there's people here. We know there's Craig, the finance committee. Go ahead,
George, I'm sorry, we've had a conversation for about 7 years about the payment in lieu of taxes. And as you know, we've had the conversation, when we started off, you were surprised to learn that, in fact, the money had been put into the budget.
Yeah,
And so I will say, prior to my arrival and Liz's arrival, because
Yeah.
there was a decision made by someone
yeah,
to put it into the budget. And once it's in the budget, it stays in the budget, because it is a regular, reoccurring source of
Yeah.
revenue. If you look at the tax rate recap sheet, payment in lieu of taxes is something that the Department of Revenue wants us to account for every year. They want us to count it as a local revenue source. So if you turn to the recap sheet, it's in there, it's actually a line that's listed in there. So we put it in there. And again, I know George was surprised that it had put in at some point,
Yeah.
but it was put in there. I just only want to say that enterprise funds typically do one of two things. They either make a payment in lieu of taxes, or they pay something called indirect costs. And we know that, for example, the water fund pays about $750,000 in indirect costs. They don't pay a payment in lieu of taxes. But typically, that's the cost of the town providing services to that enterprise fund. So typically, it's one or the other. It's very unusual that none of them, the option is zero, because I know Liz and I will say, that's not how we try to run an enterprise fund. So I realize what George is trying to accomplish, and what I would suggest is perhaps the way to do it is when we sit down and begin developing our revenue plans for fiscal year 2014, we do it with in mind that the discussions that just took place this evening, that those need to take place within the context of the 2014 budget process, which will begin early next year, when we look at it in that regard.
and we'd be happy to look at any services, we get direct services from the town, because we do our own plowing. The tenant does the plowing, the town doesn't do the plowing.
I see this enterprise as a unique enterprise. I think the town has benefited tremendously since the commission has taken over the Hillview. So just because they may not make a payment in lieu of taxes, it's voluntary, or that there isn't an indirect cost, I don't know how you can sit there and say, maybe it doesn't fit under the definition, but they have.
I think paying the debt service in Ipswich River Park, the development of Ipswich River Park,
Right.
the turf field
Absolutely.
is certainly,
But we also funded
the tennis courts,
that are being ripped up.
I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, I'm telling you it's a change of practice from how we've operated for the last 15 or 20
I think it's important
years.
to recognize that they've assumed a significant amount of debt to accumulate some very worthy assets that are utilized on a daily basis in this community, and they're funding it and paying it. So I think,
And there's other things that have been approached to us. There was a conversation of us taking over all the school fields. And if I have to go through what I went through for the turf field with the school committee.
Crazy.
But there was talk of doing that, and there's other ways you can actually, get the money placed back into town. But this, again, I only think further out. And what triggered to me was, I think it was, might be 7 or 8 years ago, I was sitting in a meeting here, and Jim DeCola, I believe it was, came in and needed 2 vehicles. And it became a big to-do, where is the money gonna come from? Whose budget? And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be a perfect place to all of a sudden get, $100,000 from the Hillview Enterprise that year and say, we can use this money. How you do it, I know you budget and everything, but how do we do that? And then that's in nobody's budget. And you get 2 new vehicles. And everybody's happy. And I thought, wow, how do we get back to what it was? Because again, as more and more people get involved, they have no sense of history, and that's the reason I stay, sense of history, the old archives, And I know what it's supposed to be, and we have to get back to that, or again, somewhere down the road, it becomes an issue. And it could become a real issue.
Mr. Funk?
George, you may not have the answer now, but do you know what, out of the current year debt service, the 487, what's attributed to town stuff, not Hillview stuff?
Oh, no, it's mostly town stuff.
It is.
Some of it's Hillview, but we don't bond, that's probably, the turf field, of course. Trying to think,
Do you know the number of the year, per year on the turf field?
about 200,000, round figures.
Really?
It's
Yeah.
155 for principal,
How much?
155 for principal.
And interest?
Come on.
That's
Like 47.
Yeah, so no, but
it's
it's,
significant.
yeah.
Most of the original debt's dropped off, and then it's just
Oh, yeah, yeah,
the
and-
purchase and all that stuff is almost gone.
Ipswich River Park, that should
Ipswich River
be,
Park is now dropping down
yeah,
significantly.
yeah.
So
You know, when I brought the topic up, I knew it really wasn't going to float, but I was really just trying to find a way to bring this back around again, because it was an interesting conversation, and I am curious about the future and what we do with that money and how we approach it. Are we going to change it? I mean,
So this is all a setup between you and George to talk about.
No, I kind of use it as an opportunity, though, to bring it together. But getting back to it, that building is old and tired, and Mr. Messeri's right. If you look at it from a business perspective, it's a bad investment. I wouldn't do it. But it's bigger than that, all right? It's a big part of our community. We do a lot of events there, and I want to see it be successful, whoever takes it over.
Yeah.
I don't want to give them a building that they have fighting an uphill battle to make their customers happy, to have a wedding in there,
Yeah.
and, the wallpaper's falling off the wall. We don't want that. So that was all my motivation for bringing this up again. They just don't have the money they need to get there, because the building is pretty tight, and when you go and you put it into infrastructure like HVAC units, the money's gonna get sucked up pretty quickly.
Yeah, the older building is built in 16-something, and we had to, but we were there. Well, were you there then?
16.
I listened to a member of the
Some
Historic
people think
District
Tommy has been.
Commission.
Yes.
I listened to a member of the Historic District Commission beat us up over the door that disappeared. We replaced it.
But were you there when the
So
building
be
was
careful
collapsing?
about what you do with that building.
You were there when the building was collapsing. We had to spend all
Yes.
that money on jacking it all up. So you don't see that. But
If you go down in the basement of the old building, you'll
Yeah.
find a dozen or so
Find the old
alley
ovens and everything.
columns.
Trees.
But we
Such
do want
that you
to,
have to walk through the room. The room is useless except for storage, I guess, as a result, just to keep the floor in that main building from falling
but
in.
we do want to keep the project as an asset to what it's been. And again, I do know there's other thoughts out there. Still talk of a senior center, all those things. And they're going to come to fruition someday. And they look to us for the initial funding, you know?
I find it interesting you mentioned me crawling on the roof, because
Out the window.
up the stairs, out the window, over to the air conditioning unit to debug, get a fuse put in, put it back online.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there was a period of time when the electrical system was insufficient, and
Yeah.
we solved the problem by putting a fan
Yeah,
in front of the main switch box.
yeah. It's,
As when it heated up, the breaker popped.
Is there any thought to just starting anew?
well, I've saved the building twice. It was
Does it get to a point
Answer's
that
no.
you're putting Band-Aids on this building?
well, again, I mean, the building comes with history. It comes with, when the taking, it's an attractive building, some of it. You could cut out the old part, give it to the Historical Society and let them take it down to the center of town and start anew, but that's a whole new issue. Then you'd really have an issue with the in lieu of taxes.
But
But
At some
I
point,
don't know. Yeah, I mean, eventually,
Band-Aid on things.
it's old, it's tired.
Right.
It's worth an open discussion, but
Enough for tonight, I just figured I'd throw it out.
I don't know how the townspeople would think of that. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, some people get attached to things, so.
So where's it leave us?
So what do we want another $150,000 in the warrant article to allow for either borrowing and/or expending money?
No.
You mean from general government?
No, not from general government.
No.
Oh.
No.
No.
Oh, from
Your budget has to be adjusted.
They can only afford 300. That's all they can do this year is 300, and next year projected.
Oh, yeah, we're not, I thought you were looking to give us money here, so, no, we're not going over
Well,
the
you can
300.
authorize the borrow, not necessarily do it.
Yeah, but, Peter Henry,
But from
our
a
accountant,
timing standpoint, if we authorize the
he's-
borrowing in October, late
We're
spring.
maxed out there. We don't want to do that. That's why we've talked
We did talk about that. They
about
said no.
staging in the project, and in
Yeah.
3 years, it could be completed the way the person thinks it should be.
Okay.
But no, we are not looking to extend ourselves, no. That wouldn't be beneficial to anybody, actually.
There's been a lot of talk about the downstairs, so
Yeah.
when you only have a limited amount of funds, and you start going at and attacking the upstairs,
Yeah.
I think the downstairs falls away, and then I think some people in town are very upset that they've heard those rumors, and I'm not saying they're true, I'm not saying that's exactly what's gonna happen, but when you only have limited funds, something has to sacrifice, so That was kind of my motivation, try to help them find an extra little bit of money. I'd love to see that downstairs stay open. I think a lot of people rely on, or look forward to going there, their breakfast and their lunch and dinner in the bar, so.
Well,
That may not
public
happen.
proposal you're all welcome to read, so if you have a copy of it, probably great from the,
No doubt.
so if you want to read what his plans are, you can look at those. But I think we're extended pretty well with the
Yeah.
300,000, yeah. And you all can talk about the in lieu of taxes. And again, we're not opposed to paying it. It's the question of that there has to be an understanding, and maybe there has to be something written so future people can look at that and say, well, this year there was a hurricane, there's zero. You know, 'cause that might happen.
I've heard you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you.
Because I fully understand your position, so we have to consider it
Hey,
next
thanks a
budget
lot.
season.
All right.
Judge, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Nice to
George.
see you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for putting it on.
George, good luck tomorrow.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thank you.
Yes, we're going to move down to item 7, vote to approve FY 2013 capital improvement plan.
What page are we starting this discussion on?
Thank you.
Is it on the supplement, or are we gonna start with?
I didn't see anything in here, period.
All I saw was a sheet that listed each item with a yes or a no, I
Right.
believe.
Yeah, that's on page 20, but then there was some other pages, so I'm not sure where you want to start.
Turn it over to
Little
Mr.
confused.
Valiakonis.
Board members, in your packet, page is it?
Is it number 7, capital improvement?
Page 86,
86.
correct. Yes, everyone to get to page 86. Page 86 has been updated as a result of the meeting that the board held last week. What we've updated is the recommendations for financing if the board decides to approve these items. And what we would suggest is that the board consider each item that's listed here in the order they are and take a yes/no vote on each. The goal, again, is to present these and the dollar amounts and source of funds as part of the warrant for town meeting. I would note that as part of the discussions that took place last week, the little school retaining wall should be removed from the capital improvement plan. It should be in the form of a special warrant article. The reason for that is the cost of that is uncertain. And again, the goal of the capital improvement plan is to present a specific dollar amount, set dollar amount to town meeting for approval. So the first item that's on the list is digital document management. The total cost is $355,000. The recommended source of funding would be to borrow.
Mr. Prisco?
I'm sorry. I thought we were going to get at least an idea financially where we were with free cash and how much money we actually have to do all this stuff.
And how does this
before we actually start digging
How does it
into
affect our
right?
debt service?
Right, how it affects our debt service, right? That would be really helpful before we start really going over each item, unless, Mr. Chairman, you'd rather do it this way. For me personally,
I think what you suggest makes sense.
so.
On the issue of debt service, I would recommend that you look in the supplement.
Finance committee have a, yep.
Pass me the letter.
Supplement.
Page 1 in your supplement is a listing of general fund non-exempt debt. It's for fiscal years 2013 through 2021. You'll note that our debt service is at its peak this current fiscal year, just over $1.4 million. And going forward, we have substantial debt payment in 2014. Debt, as you can see, drops off thereafter, beginning in 2015, which is to be expected in terms of our borrowing capacity. So again, the goal would be that we would issue any item that we would request here. We would issue bans. Bans would be for a period of at least 1 year. We can, under law, issue bans for up to 2 years. And then what we would simply do is go forward and borrow those items at a later date for permanent debt financing.
Do we have to make that decision now, whether we do 1 or 2 year bans?
Nope, you just have to indicate whether you want to borrow. This remains to be down the road. The town can make that decision at a later date.
In
Does
2000
the
oh, sorry.
213 non-exempt debt include everything through our last town meeting?
It includes the borrowing on 6/18.
Are there any bans included here that haven't been converted to debt?
No,
Okay.
this is all long-term.
Are there any outstanding bans?
We do. They are being paid off in September. Where we borrowed early, those bans weren't due yet.
So if we did nothing, we borrowed not another penny, this would reflect our actual debt payment for 2013.
Correct.
It wouldn't change. Okay.
Any other questions, board members?
No, what I would like to also, just while we're on the issue of borrowing, I just want to state that the capital improvement plan is broken down as follows for borrowings. General government would be $1,097,290. Water enterprise fund would be $110,000, and the Hillview enterprise fund would be $300,000. So if the board were to approve the capital improvement plan as submitted, the total borrowings would fall into those categories. Again, almost $1.1 million in general government, $110,000 in water enterprise, and $300,000 in Hillview enterprise fund debt. Other available funds under the capital, as Selectman Prisco would ask for, was an update. The total capital improvement plan would total $685,354. Total capital improvement plan as proposed and suggested to the board this evening would be $2,192,644.
Mr. Messere?
Why can't we have a sheet with that information on it?
You do.
I mean,
You
this
do.
is...
You do, sir. You do,
Where?
sir.
Where is it?
It's page 86 one more time.
Back in your original, not in the supplement, but in the original.
No, I'm talking about... All right.
It's
Go back
there.
I'm sorry.
And I would ask you to look at the bottom of the page. You have all your sources laid out, and you have your bottom line recaps on the bottom of the sheet, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, can I just say something? I'm going to say it now before we get any further into this discussion. It's been a bone of contention of mine since I've been on the board. The way we look at capital, the way we approach it, seems to be, and I hope no one takes offense to this, but seems to be haphazard, in that we're here this evening, we really don't have a true sense of debt service. We had it in a supplement tonight. What I think we need to do, and it was brought up at a financial planning team meeting, but it was resoundingly shot down when the chair of the finance committee and I brought it up. At least on the town side, I think we need something equivalent to a capital review committee. And these items, in my opinion, need to be reviewed much earlier than August, in that what I would suggest, and I hope the board would join me in considering it, that this committee is made up of a member of the Finance Committee, a member of the Board of Selectmen, in conjunction with the Town Administrator, the finance director, and someone from, the town administrator chooses from his department heads. And this process should start probably in the spring at the latest. And at that point, your department heads can come to the committee, these items can be vetted out, there could be a process that's put in place by which detail is presented, not only to the town administrator, the finance committee, and the board of selectmen, well in advance of a week or 2 weeks prior to this board needing to make decisions on millions of dollars. I don't think this is the proper way, nor the best way to go about this process. And Mr. Valiakonis, I think the way you address Mr. Messeri is inappropriate.
Well, I was offended by the tone of his comments, sir.
There was no tone in Mr. Messeri's
I
comment.
take exception to that, sir.
The man simply asked if he could have a sheet that shows all those numbers that you rattled off.
And that sheet was presented when the board received its packet on Thursday.
Right, I didn't see it on the bottom of the sheet.
He didn't see it. All you had to say was, Mr. Messeri, it's on page 86, and the man could have found it. So, I, for one, didn't appreciate how you addressed him. But getting back to my larger point, this is a process that needs to be revamped. It's not the way we should go about considering how we're going to spend and bond upwards of $2 million on an annual basis. I don't know if any other member wants to weigh in at this point, but I had to say this out at the outset, because I don't like how it's being done.
I'll comment on that.
Mr. Fode?
I was a little shocked that we got the stuff last week and we're expected to vote on it this week. I feel like it's kind of, and no disrespect to anybody, I feel it's kind of back of the envelope. I think we need more information on a lot of these projects that we're not getting, and I'm not comfortable, like you said, voting for almost $2.2 million in expenditures and not having the information that we need. So a week's time is definitely not enough time for me to go over all the stuff and realize whether we should be spending this money or not. So I'm not happy with the way it's going.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Messeri?
I would like to go through each one of these items
Sure.
one by one, just to get a clear understanding of what's here. I know we've gone through the presentation yesterday, and why the town administrator is recommending specific financing for each one of these. I guess, Greg, what I was expecting was, by each item, what the funding source would be. You've got it totaled.
It's all laid out, sir.
All the way to the right, he's got it kind of noted, right, on the right-hand side.
Okay. I'm
Which
sorry. I've got this thing blown up.
I was missing it too.
I got this
and-
thing blown up, and I'm not looking at that column.
But kind of, just a,
Mr. Prisco?
so, just make sure I understand the spreadsheet before we get into it. The available funds of $685,354, that's the free cash we have available to do this.
No, sir, we have no free cash certified today.
But you have, the finance director must have, she's sitting right here, I'm sure she has an estimate as to what free cash is. It may not be something she's too comfortable, I'm sure she's going to be very conservative, I shall say, but there has to be a number that
Right.
she's comfortable with, at least for discussion this evening, that she's able to tell us, because otherwise, we're throwing blindfolded, throwing dots. So
No, we're comfortable in proposing the available funds that you see here of $685,354 as being money that would be available from free cash. That's a comfortable recommendation that we would make.
Does that answer your question?
What is your estimate?
The balance sheet, what is my estimate?
Yeah, what's your estimate on it though? Total.
Sure. The estimate is more than $927,000, which was certified for last year. We just closed the year today, so we will begin that. We close out a lot that we didn't get to transfer out at special town meeting, so that will close to free cash. So, you can assume over $1 million.
That's what I needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to state, just again, we completed June town meeting 2 months ago. The fact that we have town meetings that are exactly 4 months apart from each other does not allow what I believe is sufficient time to conduct a thorough vetting of the process. The fact that the board wishes to see and vote a capital improvement plan that appears on the warrant further constrains the amount of time that we have available. I think it's unusual that we would have a town meeting. Town meetings are only 4 months apart, and that does create a crunch on finance and administration to present the capital improvement plan. We're 6 weeks away from town meeting. That's a long ways off. We don't need to nail down every single detail this evening, but what we need to do is prepare you that these are the volume of the requests that we received, and we would ask for your consideration and votes this evening.
Guess we can go item by item.
So we on 86, or are we going back to, we're good on staying
Mr.
on 86?
Baliutonis, where would you like us?
I'd like us to go back to page 86.
Okay,
Thank you.
page 86.
The first item is digital document management. The amount is $355,000. The recommendation is to borrow that amount of money.
Where is the hardware required for that?
Is it embedded in the information technology portion?
Yes.
And how much
Much.
is that number?
We increased it to, I think it's 48,000.
It's part of the first line, various hardware and software?
The 91.
The
It's
91?
part of the 91.
So what is the amount for the document management?
48,000?
I believe it's 48,000.
So the whole thing is about $400,000 if we were to just take the,
Yes.
so it's 355 plus the
Correct.
48, is around $400,000.
For 2013, we're not going to borrow the 355, we're going to borrow the 120.
No. If we're going to borrow, we would borrow the whole amount.
And then have it available to expend over time, but you're borrowing it at lower interest rates, obviously.
Right. We're going to ban it for 2 years, so.
So, just to make sure I understand it, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So when we look at town road program, we're going to go in for $1.4 million?
We're not borrowing for town road.
Just the borrow, just was it a notation?
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Notation
available
borrowed?
funds.
Okay, they're all funds there, right? I see it now. Okay,
So
got it.
you want a separate motion on each item? Is that-
That's actually the way we've requested the board vote, is yes, no on each item. If it's a no, then we will not include it in the capital improvement plan for town meeting. It'll be off the list.
I
Never seen that.
I guess I am in support of this program, but not at this time. My feeling is very strongly that we need to complete the Munis system completely, get it up and running with the resources that we have. And I know, Greg, you said, well, it's 2 separate teams, but in reality, it's going to be a big burden on IT, even with the additional person. The additional person, I'm hoping, will allow Gene to spend his full time supporting the implementation of getting the servers installed and getting everything squared away. So my thoughts are what we should do is we should take care of Munis and get that fully paid for and implemented this fiscal year and hold off on the document management system until next year, including borrowing money for it. I don't see the interest rates going up that rapidly, and I think that better fits our declining revenue plan, debt service. So those are my feelings on the issue. I do want to see this Munis system completed before we do anything else. It's a big project. It's going to consume our employees, and I think to do it right is going to require the full attention of not only the IT department but our staff.
Yeah,
Mr. O'Leary.
I concur with Bob. Again, Greg, I think this is a valuable tool that we should invest in, but I too think that our human resources are strained as it is, and I think the addition of this IT person is going to be a good thing. I think I'd like to see them address some of the issues that are facing us today and get this Munis system fully implemented. I think that's where our priority should be. So I embrace the program that you put forth, but I too think you should push it out a year and then move forward with it. So not for this town meeting.
Mr. Prisco?
I mean, it's been proven, anything we've done with Munis has taken a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of human resources, getting involved in it, which has me concerned to say even pushing it out a year. Maybe we should have the discussion now and make it easy for him so he doesn't spend a lot of time. Do we think it's realistic that we'll be ready in a year? I mean, I hate to have Mr. Valaconis go through all this trouble again, bring it back to us next year, and then us deny him. I think it's a 2-year effort with what we're making an investment in Munis and all the stuff that we have here on the street, what we have to get done. I think it's more realistic that we put this out till 2015 for the document management.
I guess what we don't know at this point is how long will it take to implement all the Munis modules? When do you expect staff to be proficient in Munis? So
Greg's passing out a potential implementation schedule.
easy for you to say.
Huh?
Easy for you to say.
So a year from
Mike,
now.
they have a copy.
So it should be a year from now.
Anybody else want to know?
When you say implementation, in terms of staff being able to run with it,
Right.
these dates that you're comfortable enough for us to rely on for that aspect of it, not just the been uploaded and on the system?
No, these are go-live dates. So, fully trained, ready to go, use right away. So,
And based upon this sheet, it looks like the last 3 modules will be up and running by July of 2014.
calendar year.
So I don't see any reason why document management can't be brought back. I mean, we'll have to revisit it if things happen with Munis along the way, which they may.
Mhm.
But other than that, I don't see why we would not.
I would keep you posted along the way of, the progress that we're making, depending on, we could run into some roadblocks, but these are pretty optimistic dates, and as Mr. Prisco said, FY15, we should be fully set with Munis, so we could start on another endeavor.
So all of these dates include you providing your staff the time they need to get acclimated and comfortable.
If it gets approved at October town meeting, yes.
So you would be in favor of us taking on the document management next year?
These are calendar year, so July of 2014 is really the beginning of FY15.
So you would think it would be
All right.
more
So I
realistic for
missed-
us to,
Good,
Just
no,
want to
I'm
make sure we
sorry. Good
clarify.
point, good point. All right.
that's it. No, you clarified it.
Okay.
FY 2015 is probably when we need to bring this document management back up for.
We would be done with Munis.
So I
at
misread
that.
it. So
Yes.
it may make sense to hold off one following year.
Right, not next year. If we want to be done with Munis for the next,
Mhm.
implementation, it would be
I'm
FY15.
not opposed to a year from now, talking about
Right.
where are we at with Munis, and if it's going smoothly, then
Right.
the timing may be right to start undertaking this other project. So I don't want to just push it out 2 years. I think
Right.
it would be incumbent upon him to bring it back up.
I don't disagree. I think if, Greg should revisit it again next year, and if we think we're ahead of where we stand here, or even close to where we stand here, and it's feasible to do it next year, I wouldn't want to tie Greg's hands, tell him, don't bring it back next
Right.
year.
This, this is giving us enough time, where it's in the middle of the year to start the progress. You don't really want to go live mid-year in the middle of a fiscal year, so you'd rather start at the start of a fiscal year. So I can't say that, in 5 months' time we would be done with Munis for the larger modules, so that's why I'm putting it out to the next fiscal year, but it could be a year from October.
But you'll know this time next year.
Right. Of how we're doing, you
Right.
know.
Fair? Yeah, that's fair.
Any further questions, discussions? This issue?
So that would, out of the 91,000, we'd be taking $48,000
Correct.
out of that.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest, and again, we had some discussion last meeting about catching up on our technology, where we have fallen behind. And to me, that $48,000 or $50,000, or a portion of it, should be utilized to get ourselves back on track for a regular replacement program. Although I know most of this is from available funds, except for the Munis software. So I don't know if there will be any available funds. Doesn't appear to be any. So you'd have to borrow the $50,000.
Well, they put the money in for a computer equipment and replacement program. and-
Right, but that was not necessarily to supplement it to the point where we would be caught up. I mean, we still have some,
There would be. There's,
Yeah, I
there's
think-
out of the information technology, that first line item there of 91,000 and change, 48 of that was for equipment necessary for document management. So
so if we leave it,
if you leave it, just transfer it to a different line item, where you're going to add it to the computer replacement, if that's the wish. of the
Yeah, that
board.
was, Steve, that was for the servers required to support the document management system.
okay.
I guess,
So
maybe,
I would say to flip that 48,000 down into the replacement program.
yeah, because maybe you could just give us a quick update on the 45,000.
Right.
What were you going to try to accomplish with that? And
After last meeting, Jean and I and Greg, we spoke about, what was realistic, what we could get done in a year. And last week, that was 30,000, that dollar amount. And so we've increased it another 15 to, like Mr. O'Leary said, to, really replace our computers that need to be replaced. So we felt that that was a fair amount. But, we'll take more if.
well,
Mr. Kelleher?
If you've got a replacement program, it assumes you're going to be replacing them over the next 4
5 years.
fiscal years as well.
Mhm.
I'm not sure the value of moving one of those years up and doing 2 of them in fiscal 13. I mean, you want a program so that, that it's always going on, and you're not going to get hit with big bumps. So if you pop a big bump into this year, then the equipment you're buying this year, you're going to have $90,000.
Right, but based
worth of
upon the presentation we had last year, we're in a trough still. This doesn't even things out. We're still behind the 8 ball on a significant number of machines here. We're 2001, 2, and 3. I mean, some of them are 10, 12 years old. So we need the cash infusion, I think, in the first year in order to get on into a cycle where it just becomes regular routine. We're not there.
This budget should have reflected that from the
Well,
get-go.
Yeah, they just, I don't disagree.
If that's the story, it's.
That was the story we got
That's the
last.
story we got.
That's the story we got, so I don't
Right.
disagree. And I think they were just trying to second guess what we were thinking, which may have been the first mistake, giving us far too much credit.
You figured that
Give us
out.
credit that we were even thinking about it. But, no, I mean, the message we got, I thought, was pretty clear, that we need an infusion.
Steve, I think the amount they put in there is adequate.
Mr. Messeri, the IT director, and myself met probably for about 6 weeks straight, going over all the needs of technology for the town, meeting with various departments to see what their needs were, and going over the inventory list, double checking it to make sure that we had the correct numbers, the correct years of each PC. So, with doing some estimates and the levels of PCs, we felt that the 30,000 was sufficient. Some users don't need the most powerful machine, so we priced out 3 different levels. We also factored in a few printers and other various necessary hardware for them. So we did spend a lot of time on that number and the amount of PCs that we would replace over the years.
So you think the 45 sufficient to get you started, getting us back on track on a replacement program?
It is predicated on an annual allotment of money
No,
to
that-
keep
That's understood. But
replace
this,
the older
yes.
but
equipment.
this,
We felt that 30 was fair, so, 45 will replace some of, the mid-level older machines that are on, the inventory list.
That includes all the departments, fire,
Police.
library,
Yes.
police.
Mhm.
Okay.
I, just as an aside, I would have liked to have seen, if the adjustment was made on the sheet from last week, because we're not going back and comparing a sheet from last week to this week, probably should have been some notation here that this was adjusted up. I don't know who
It
prepared
was
the
a
sheet.
$10,000 adjustment.
Yeah, still.
No, I'm just
Sure.
saying that's what.
Mhm.
Okay. So I guess we first.
Okay, don't forget about it then. Get $45,000, $48,000
There you go.
towards free cash.
Right, so I guess we have to go back. I'm still a little,
Am I reading the motion, the main motion, and then each one individually?
Yes, that's what we recommend. So your first item is digital document management.
Okay.
For $355,000, the recommendation would be to borrow.
So, okay,
just say, you just have to read it.
and then each one individually.
Item 4,
Okay.
item 1.
So we're doing individual motions?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
right.
No,
This
we're doing one motion, individual votes.
That's how the motion is.
I'm making one motion, and then we're gonna vote on each of the 21 separately,
That's how the motion would.
correct?
So,
What I suggest is, as each discussion is introduced and concluded, that the board then vote, and we move on to the next item, we have a discussion,
Right.
questions,
Okay.
vote,
But
and such.
But I'm making one motion. Okay.
Just, Mr. Chairman, you're right on the meeting, but just get a consensus on the item. Where are we at?
On digital document management, consensus?
Not at this time.
Not this time.
No,
You heard from Mr.
not
Lucier?
at this time.
No?
I've been pretty consistent along the way. Not at this time.
So we're gonna go through them all, and then I'll make a motion at the end? Is that the
Yeah.
easiest way of doing it? And then,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's just so know the consensus,
Yep,
so that when you read the motion,
I-
you've got it.
okay.
Next item is the various hardware and software. It's under information technology.
Correct. Again, the $257,290 will be borrowed. That would be for the purposes of Munis software. The other items,
Mr. Valiakonis, I think you missed an item.
yes, I'm just pointing out the highest, most expensive item, which is the borrowing item. The various hardware and software would be $91,354. You mentioned less, the $48,000, which was earmarked for digital document management related hardware. Disaster recovery and backup hardware totaling $25,000, and then computer equipment replacement program, which would be ongoing at $45,000.
So the new amount for the various hardware and software is $43,354.
Thank you.
So taking it, Mr. O'Leary.
We had some conversation this evening, executive session, relating to some technology. Would this be the appropriate place to at least be aware that we may be supplementing this between now and October town meeting?
I think that on the video stuff, the IT department isn't really equipped to deal with that.
No, but I
But
think,
We're talking
When-
about,
we're talking about-
we were informed that we may be going to a different vendor, we may be looking at some different equipment, which means some capital.
No, I don't disagree with you there.
So this is where it would go, I would think, correct?
we're not
Oh,
saying
and
they have to do the work.
Go into
We're just saying we should fund it.
Not necessarily if they're the
Where would
manager
you
of the
put that?
project.
And I don't know that they haven't quantified yet.
Don't think that project is far enough down the road to vote any money for it at all at this time.
I would think that the timing of it would be of the essence. We should be prepared, at least to have some funds available to expend towards it.
Agree.
Although, we could come back at the April town meeting and adjust the budget, make the expenditures and then adjust the budget. But to me, it's a known area of exposure. We should at least,
We don't know.
But we don't know what it
May have-
costs.
May have to be a separate item.
We don't know what it costs.
We don't know the amount.
I know we don't have an amount, but
But is this another one that we want to have separate warrant article as a placeholder?
Or the thing is, if we, between now and the October town meeting, we have a better figure, it's just, the only thing that will differ is what's printed in the warrant for the figure will be a higher number.
Yeah, again, the challenge we face is we try to nail down the capital plan for the purposes of the warrant, so the dollar amounts that you actually will approve will appear in the warrant. The moderator will allow you to go lower, but he won't allow you to go higher. So if you vote the amount for information technology at this amount, we won't be able to increase it at town meeting.
So I think we should make an educated guess. I really do. I think we shouldn't go without anything.
I don't think you can do that. We don't have.
If you leave the $48,000 in there, and then we can always not spend it.
Right.
Not spend it, and if we go with the
That's a good
numbers that you have in front of us,
That's actually, yeah.
then, that's, everything's within
That's
balance
good.
now anyway. That gives us $48,000 to address the issues on a timely basis. And then if we don't expend the money, it's our available funds that converts to free cash.
Good point.
Correct?
Does it
Good
fit?
point.
Does it fit under that description?
Various hardware and software, I would say so.
Yeah.
Pretty clean to me.
That's the way to go.
I don't have a problem with that based upon what we've heard tonight.
I take it that's how the warrant's going to read, those
Yes.
items?
Yes, it will. It will provide, obviously, a breakdown at town meeting itemizing what those costs are.
So consensus on various hardware and software, keeping the amount at the $91,354 in light of what was discussed in executive session this evening.
Yes.
Yeah. Consensus is yes.
Mhm.
Next item, Munis software. Do we need any further discussion?
No.
I think we're fully
No.
supportive of this.
So, yes.
Consensus is yes.
Yes.
The disaster recovery backup hardware, any discussion?
I want to go back to Munis Software and ask Liz a question. The Tyler Management included terminals?
The treasury management,
No, the
the Tyler cashiering.
Tyler Cashiering.
The Tyler cashiering units are part of the various hardware.
They were in the
Number.
miscellaneous. Okay.
Yes,
fine.
yep.
Okay. So disaster recovery backup hardware. Any further discussion? Nope. Consensus, board members?
Yes.
I heard one yes, okay. So yes.
Mine is a question, as I haven't seen a proposal for what we're going to do there.
We need to have a little further discussion on that.
So is that number adequate? If you need more discussion?
Well, there's a number of different ways of doing this, and I think it does need further discussion. I think that based on what Gene has proposed doing, that's adequate. So I would just leave it here, but I think what we want to do is get that nailed down before the
Yes.
October town meeting.
Mhm.
So that number is adequate regardless of which.
Well,
route you
another
choose to go.
approach would be to use a managed service approach and pay a monthly fee
Okay.
for backup and disaster recovery.
Further
And you
discussion?
think that number would, if you wanted to go with that alternative
It would be
approach?
less than this, of course.
But on a monthly basis, you're having
On a
some
monthly
sort of fee.
basis.
Good, I just want to make sure the number's good.
Okay. Board members?
Yes.
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 Consensus is yes. Computer equipment replacement program. I think we've
Yeah.
Yes.
batted that around.
Yes. Yes.
Consensus is yes.
Yes.
On to next item, under fire, Class A pumper.
Can I go back there for a second? On the computer equipment replacement program, would that be a budget adjustment, Greg?
No. We would handle it, this is how the schools have presented it every year in the form of a capital item, so we would just have an annual capital item for annual computer replacement equipment.
Finance committee?
What's the life expectancy of a computer?
At least 5 years. We have
Yeah.
many that are at least 10 here.
Finance committee wish to weigh in?
On the computer replacement program?
Yes.
Defining them as a group,
Yes.
I think that this would qualify under the capital
Okay.
program.
Thank you.
Buying individual computers, onesies and twosies, it wouldn't, but at this level, you're not gonna hit, I don't know, maybe when you get out in 16 and 17, you're not gonna, you may be, no, still good.
Thank you. All set. On to fire, Class A pumper. The amount,
485,000, and the available source of funds would be to borrow. That's what the recommendation would be, to borrow those monies.
Have,
Mr. Messeri?
in terms of source of funding for the borrowing there, with the additional ALS revenue, I know it's very premature, but would we consider using some of that money if it was available for that?
Conceivably, Bob, but I wouldn't want to make a commitment because the ALS revenues at this point are still preliminary. We're only 4 months into the program. So at this point, the goal would be to use the ALS revenues to supplement our staffing in terms of hiring additional paramedics and supplementing the ambulance service. I think that the chief can respond to in terms of how often the pumper truck responds to calls, but I think it's really down the list in terms of using ALS revenues to fund it.
Chief? Deputy Chief?
The chief-
Anyone want to weigh in?
Couldn't afford to buy an ambulance. I don't see us affording to buy a pumper out of that account.
No, I'm assuming you would continue to buy the things you normally buy with the ambulance revenue first.
I think in the past, this is the first time we've gone into the ambulance, so if we're going to utilize that money, maybe better appropriation for the ambulance, the next ambulance in 5 years.
Well, I agree with that. Okay, sorry I asked the question.
No.
Good question.
Fine question.
We've gone over the pumper thing.
We've gone over it. I think, Chief, as I said to you this evening, I thought you did a fantastic job explaining the need last week.
What do we borrow, what's the borrowing period for that?
20 years.
So they consider life of the,
Correct. We would want to cut it as close to the useful life of the equipment as possible.
Any other, Mr. Prisco?
Chief did do, I think it was the best presentation we received that particular night, and I'm not saying I'm not in favor of this, but looking at the fire department as a whole, in our strategic plan, we actually been talking about what we're gonna do with that building. I know it's a little off topic, but, you know, what's our priority? Are we gonna ever take that building in consideration and do anything with it?
Absolutely. We had monies appropriated to hire an architect to do an assessment of all of our buildings. My recollection of those were monies that were voted was a year ago, Dick, in October. And so we will have a report and we'll present that report to the board.
So you've already hired someone and they've already
Yes.
decided?
Yes, to do an assessment of all of our town facilities.
I just
we
don't want
haven't
to
formed
decide
a
that.
building committee or anything
Right.
like that yet.
We want to make sure that we address those issues in a comprehensive plan
I think this
fashion.
is needed. He's convinced me, but I was concerned about where our priorities were, and I just
Sure.
want to make sure we didn't drop that priority in the discussion. Okay.
Question would be, what's the next vehicle on the list and when?
Engine 3, it's 19 years old, 6 years.
6 years from now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, if the deputy points out that we also we get a rescue about every 5 years.
Yeah, I'm talking about the big, heavy fire
Yeah,
trucks.
but I'm hoping that the ALS revenues will be able to fund the next ambulance. So that's why I didn't bring that up. Our next engine is engine 3, it's 19 years old.
Mr. Prisco?
What about the grant on this whole thing? I know you presented it in two ways.
What would you like to know?
What do you think your probability is?
Slim. Realistically optimistic.
Okay. Thanks.
Any further discussion?
But you'll do your hardest to get it.
I already did.
I know.
It's beyond us now.
Yeah. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Yes.
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 Next item.
Next item is town road program.
Ready.
Can I stop for a moment? The
Yes.
way the motion is written, it has other items here which
Number
I
14.
don't believe should have been included because they look like they're out for 2014 and beyond.
That's
Just
correct.
wanted,
Okay.
Scratch those items.
all right, so we're scratching in the motion items 7, item 8, and item 9. which are listed here:
Thank you,
parks,
sir.
rec, resurface, walking paths, parks, rec, IRP, microsurface, park/rec, develop Wheeler property. Moving on to Public Works, Highway Town Road Program, we just been handed document entitled Paving Funds Available and Obligated Projects. I'm happy to have received this, but would have preferred to have received it probably with the packet on Thursday. The information was asked for during the presentation process last week, in order for the board to be able to read it and digest it before we take a consensus vote on these items.
Okay, just a quick question.
Mr. Fode?
On funds available, I thought the 491,368 is the new allotment, but I thought we had said last week there was $155,000 in available funds, and now we're saying it's closer to 43,000, 44,000?
If you look at the attachments, I overestimated it. It's closer to 25,000. So chapter 98, it's about 17 for the town road from 2 different flag that. I've attached all the substantiated documentation for your information.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to...
Town road program is shown on the last page.
Right, okay. I thought it was 155 in the book last week. Between the two.
Mr. Chairman, there is some information the board should be aware of, and I'm just handing out a document. It identifies projects that have been included in the state transportation bond bill that was signed into law by the governor last Thursday. We were aware of the fact that there were a couple of North Reading projects that were in the pipeline for possible funding, and I'm happy to report that as part of the governor's plan, that if you refer down to lines 368, you'll note that there's an amount of $250,000 which has been earmarked in the transportation bond bill to make improvements to Chestnut Street, to Central Street between North Street and Spruce Street, and then further the sum of $350,000 for the Tower Hill Road construction project. So those are monies that we were cautiously optimistic about. We had requested our legislative delegation to include these when they were originally seeking information on local projects. We did submit information to back up and justify these, and they have been reported out and voted into law that these are monies that are available to the town for these two particular projects.
So these are in addition to the
That's
Chapter
correct.
90?
In addition to Chapter 90, the town will have $600,000 of additional road money for these two projects.
So on the Tower Hill Road paving, Dick, you've got $335,000. Is that coming out of the 350 that's new appropriation? Or
No.
So it's going to be $700,000 spent on?
What I'm saying is, this supplemental information was received today. We knew that it was in there, we did not budget for it. What Dick is saying is he's obligated it out of his existing funds that are shown here. These monies are just new into the equation.
But,
So, that
okay,
being
Mr.
said,
Leonard,
so
continue.
I'm sorry, so the Tower Hill Road project can now be funded with these funds,
That's correct.
correct? Which frees up $335,000,
Correct.
That's right.
right?
And Greg asked me to come up with supplemental roads in the chapter 90 to replace that amount. That would be the Linwood, Gordon, and Sumner, and Haverhill Street from Park Street to Chestnut Street. That's roughly the same dollar amount.
Well, that, I believe, differs from the list that you had produced last week for an additional appropriation from us for roads for either 200, 250, or 300, correct?
In that case, Gordon Road would be deleted from the list that had 200,000. And I would propose to add part of Green Street, Cold Spring, and Rock Street, which adds us up roughly to that same amount.
So you would delete Gordon.
He's gonna
for
get
the-
another copy.
Is that a new
You
one,
have
or is
that?
it
No, it's the same one.
So if I'm understanding it correctly, you would delete Gordon.
Sorry, I already-
Substitute 3 other streets, adding up to the same dollar amount.
Okay. But those 3 other streets, in addition to Wadsworth, Charles, Southwick, Stevens, Summit, and Cameron?
Right, all the, except for the top one, we just substitute 3 streets for Gordon, everything else will be
What are
the
the
same.
3 streets again?
Green, Cold Spring, and Rock.
Green, Cold Spring, and what?
Rock
Oh.
Street.
Um,
And under the Chapter 90, I would propose swapping out Tower Hill, since it's funded by an alternate source, and replacing it with the ones that you picked out last year that I didn't put on the 200,000. So we do all of Linwood, all of Gordon, and Sumner, the little piece in the middle. And as part of the whole traffic, Chestnut Street, then we've noted that Havel Street between Park and Chestnut Street are in pretty tough shape. And that adds up to 315,000. So those 3 streets would be substituted for the Tower Hill under the Chapter 90.
That's not reflected in this package you just gave, what you just said.
Because literally, I did that last week. We literally found out this morning about the state money.
Okay, that's fine.
So literally, we're
We
back
figured
at
you'd be
envelopes
pleased.
right now.
Mr. Kelleher?
Mr. Chairman, are there any additional copies of these documents that we might know what's going on?
I have copies, I don't know what's going on.
I got a possible head.
Yeah, I'm confused.
We haven't seen any of this stuff, so I'm not sure what we
Can I-
can
Mr. Chair, ask a
conversation.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, mine.
Mr. Foley, you had a
No,
question?
no, I'll hold off.
Just, I have a question. In relation to, Dick, what about the rest of Central Street? I mean,
That's my-
this
that was my
this is a
question.
windfall as far as, you
That was
know,
my question.
this takes care of a little bit more than half of Central Street.
About a third.
Only about a third down to Spruce? From
We
north-
did, over the last
From
summer or
north to
so,
Spruce.
2 years, we've done the utilities under Central Street.
Yeah,
So the next phase would be, given that money, and when it becomes available, is to do that section of, from Spruce North to North Street.
right.
And number 2, we'd look at the utilities underneath Central Street, from Spruce down to Central Street.
Those are done, those are done or are not done?
Not done. We've
Those are
only
not-
done that one segment. We intended to do it in 3 different segments.
Okay.
So the next phase in Central Street, besides the segment that Greg mentioned, we'd have to fix, all the water services are relatively old, place those, fix drainage, we do all the underground stuff. If we had funds next year,
Okay, so, well, what I'm thinking is, I mean, Central Street is probably one of the worst streets in town. Um, Since we've got some money that was freed up, why wouldn't we commit to continuing and finishing off the Central Street project as much as we can, with whatever it is, the underground work that needs to be done, with some of the available funds?
the thought would be to spread the money around town, so it's not just one street getting it. We try to cover several areas.
I know, it makes more people happy,
Right.
but it might not be money well spent. I mean, there are some of these, you know, a couple of these streets we're talking about that might be 5 houses affected, you know, as opposed to a major crossroads that needs major infrastructure, as I say, water services and all the rest.
The only issue, you'd have to find water money, because you can use Chapter 90 for drainage, but you'd have to find water money for services. You couldn't use these funds for that.
Typically, the water department would fund the water service replacements. Just time, it would take a while to do it, It'd take the whole season most likely to do it. It's in the order of 50, I think, services, which takes quite a while to get done.
Yeah.
So odds are, we'd be looking for money to pave that road to 2014.
That's if you get the other infrastructure done, the drainage and the water,
Correct.
but you don't have that.
The water is
Just the
covered
water.
under the water department.
So for the rest of Central Street, the water department, that's already allocated and ready to go, but the drainage is
It's
not?
within their budget.
Okay, but the drainage is not, which you can use the Chapter 90 funds
Well,
for.
I'm not sure there's any drainage needs to be fixed. I guess it just, in general,
Okay, so I guess that brings me back to, why don't we complete a major crossroads, or get as close to completion as possible before we tackle some of these other side of it. And I understand your philosophy of trying to spread the wealth around and keep some people happy, but to me, Central Street is
I agree.
Even when it's in good shape, it's a disaster. But it needs to be done.
Do you know what the cost would be for, I'm sorry.
Mr. Kristen? I'll get to you next.
Thank you.
It would just be helpful to get through the discussion, really, for me. is Now that we have this information, just to verify that the available funds now are 1.135085. Is that correct? We do this together as a little exercise?
Well, other than those funds that are appropriated here for specific
Those are
projects.
earmarked.
I understand. I'm just
Specific
kind of
projects.
staying consistent with what the format's been given to us here. You add 250 and the 350 to the available funds now, right? You would not do that.
No, because those are earmarked for those two
Because-
projects, so we can't touch
The
them.
only thing it does is it takes
Frees
one of the
up.
projects off the table, the
Okay.
335.
Then maybe,
330.
help me, go through Chestnut Street, traffic engineer, and tell me, is that coming out of FY 2012, Chapter 90? Let's just put a little note next to each one of these, so I have an idea where they're coming from, because I'm a little confused.
Well,
If- if
I don't think it matters where you take it from. You're taking it from the
Available.
bottom line of 535,085. Am I correct,
Yes.
Mr. Cannavale?
You had directed me last FY12 to tie up the money, so that's where the source is, if you need to know.
No, just simply, if you add up FY 12, Chapter 90, it's left over. FY 13, Chapter 90, we're going to receive. And what's left over, FY 11, town road money. Add those up, you get your number of 535,085, correct?
Yes.
So from that, you're going to subtract Chestnut Street traffic engineering, pavement management engineering. You're going to delete Tower Hill from it. You're going to subtract School Hill Lane, and you're going to
No.
subtract
No,
Haverhill.
no, School Hill
No,
stays.
School
School Hill stays there.
No, but I mean subtract it from the 535.
Oh,
Right,
Yeah,
right.
right.
So basically.
But the bottom line, Michael, the Chapter 90 and available town road funds are all interchangeable for these projects as presented.
So then,
There's no prerequisites for.
So
Well,
he's got
limitations.
unspent,
Right.
okay, so
30.
my balance remaining then, I just add 334,723 to it.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
I was going to have $337,000 remaining, if my math is right and change.
That
And again-
Steve is suggesting to be applied to Central Street.
Well, or explain to me why we shouldn't. In other words, I haven't studied the thing other than Central Street's a major bone of contention, a major crossroads through the community. You have money now to do a third to close to half of it as far as the hot top, and we still need to address. The water department has revenues available, or sources available to handle the 50 or so water services. Then you're ready to go. And if there's some drainage issues, you have some money to take care of it.
But by that philosophy, you'd be tying up this money now for something I can't do till 2 years from now. Hopefully they pave the other part of Central Street until next construction season. Excuse me, 2-year construction season.
Okay, but why does that preclude you from doing the water services and any drainage? You
It
need.
doesn't, but
Oh.
by tying that money up, if you want to take the Chapter 90 money, that's 334, if I understand what you're saying, and allocate that to the second part of Central Street,
Right?
that will not go to construction until 2014,
Why?
because next year would be working on all the utilities underground.
It's 50 water services. That's what you said to us
We're a small
earlier.
department, Joe. It takes us-
Sorry?
We're a small department. This doesn't happen just like that. It will take us the whole season to go through and clean all that up. And we like to have a settlement, let it settle over one winter, so you get all the settlement out of it, and then pay the next year. We don't put back global fill, we just put back the earth, take out. So to me, it makes sense from an engineering standpoint. You backfill the trench, you allow it to settle through what's called freeze-thaw cycle. You get all the settlement, and then you pave it. Because if you pave it prematurely, then you're going to have you may have a...
Dick, are you doing the
a-
services yourself, in-house, or
We do a mix.
contracting?
We do a mix.
Combination. A lot of them we contract.
It's roughly 1/3, 2/3 contracting. Contract has been about 2/3 lately.
You don't think you can get them done in this construction?
With all the other stuff going on in town, I mean, there's other things in the water department that happen. So I think it'd be too aggressive to assume I can get all the utility work done, compact it properly, and pave that second section next year. My recommendation would be to pave it 2014. Central Street's a high-traffic road, there's a lot of wheels going over those trenches, and they pound the dirt down. If you pave it prematurely, you will have inverted speed bumps. It's my experience.
I'm
It
not
needs to make
disagreeing.
sense, let it settle, and then do it the year after.
But then again, we don't know what the available funds are going forward.
Well, Chapter 90 is probably going to be that same amount going forward. Typically, it's consistent. So odds are FY '14 will have the same dollar amount. But
Do you know
you don't want to, just to get everybody home, you guys want to change, that's fine with me. I'm telling you my recommendation, but you guys can change it.
No, that's
I'm-
fine.
I'm
I just
okay
want
with
to,
it.
I just want to air it out. I mean,
Okay.
maybe it makes perfect sense, I don't know. But
Mr. Prisco?
The 334, how long of a life would that might have? We have to spend it within a year?
No.
So,
Because it'll be leftover Chapter 90 money from FY13. As you see, we have FY12 Chapter 90 money left over.
so if we all strongly agree that Central Street needs to be done, why can't we just earmark that 337 that we have remaining?
Well, we can, but what Dick is saying is he won't be able to get to it for a whole other fiscal year, basically, to get it all hot
I'm
topped and
not smart
done.
enough to say that's right or wrong.
No,
I'm
right,
just saying,
but you won't be able to get that done.
let's
And-
earmark the 337, so we don't get using it on something else. Because me personally, even School Hill Lane, doesn't seem like that's a priority over Central Street either, but
Well, actually, I can walk that route with my wife when she gets me out. It's bad. It's deteriorated terribly bad. It's
again,
awful.
that's why I'm
Yeah.
not smart enough to decide. I just want to earmark.
If you want to walk around the
337
block with me, Mike, we'll...
for Central Street.
Yeah, that's actually, but and I think Dick's point is, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, is that, these other, he's assuming that Chapter 90 funds will be the similar going forward, so the 330
I
Chapter
reckon
90
wait till
funds should be,
Use next year's money to earmark that.
but I mean, that would be over two-thirds of the Chapter 90 funds for Central Street for the upcoming fiscal year. As opposed to this year, we have an extra windfall now to take care of that Tower Hill Road. And
You can't get the work done anyway. Even if we said use the 337 right now this year, you don't have the manpower to even use the money. So let's just earmark it.
It would be done this fiscal year, though. It would be done next spring.
This money we're talking about for the town road money, that's basically next year's money.
Next
It
spring.
won't happen this construction season.
I understand.
No, you mean
Yes.
next spring, not next calendar year you're talking about.
Construction season is the
April,
calendar
May.
year, yes.
Right, no, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we're saying the same thing.
Mr. Messeri?
It would seem to me that I would take this 334 and add the additional roads and get them done while we have the money. And then they'll be off the list, and then we'll use the Chapter 90 money to do Central Street later.
I guess my only point to this whole thing is we've got the windfall as a result of the special legislation of, and specifically the $350,000, which is going to be used for Tower Hill, which takes that off the equation. And we know that Central Street has to be addressed and has to be done, and it's a big ticket item, and we have the $350,000 windfall, which probably come close to taking care of it. I don't know.
I don't have an estimate.
Yeah, I know, but
You guys copy
at
it?
least then, with the Chapter 90 funds that come in next year, because we weren't counting this $350,000, we could stay on our regular schedule. I'd rather,
Right.
I think, I think I'm inclined to suggest that we take a look at earmarking this windfall towards the completion of Central Street.
That's my suggestion too.
I'll disagree.
And again, and I don't mind taking care of all these other things, get them off the table, but I just think that we can't count on additional windfalls like this
Right.
to address a major situation, a major thoroughfare, and get it done, and not have to worry about where the money's coming from at the expense of other roads, because these other roads they're on the list, but they're not necessarily the priority. I think Central Street isn't necessarily on the list because of the high ticket cost.
Right.
Do it.
And it'll always get bumped, because we'll never have enough money to do it. So. Mr. Messeri?
Question for Greg. Greg, is there any risk in not spending Chapter 90 money?
No.
No.
To allocate this community, there's no, well, realistically,
They don't look
there's a
at the
10-year
following and
lifespan on
say,
it.
hey,
No.
you know,
It's at 10 years. No.
Right.
Can I just ask a question on Charles Street, if I may, Dick? On the page with 200,000 at the top, you have it at 54,000. Then on the next page, you have it at 49,000. Then you have it again at 54,000.
The typo. 54.
And that's just for the section that wasn't already paved, because we already have about a third of the street that's done.
Correct.
Board members, so we, DPW
Do I need to make a
director?
motion? On,
I don't know if it's
you
a,
want from
I don't know if it's a motion, but.
It's not a motion.
What's Bob,
Consensus.
what's Bob think?
What?
What do you think
He
as
wants
far
to- he
as
wants
the
to
Central
work
Street?
on it.
Are you still looking to knock these off and worry about Central Street later?
I guess I'm rethinking it based on the fact that what I'm hearing is that even that money, even if we can't spend it until 2014, there's still not enough to finish it. Am I correct in hearing that?
I don't have an estimate for the next section.
No, but you
Well,
have the next.
Topic of discussion.
There's still another section that we haven't allocated, regardless of what it's gonna cost.
Right, but if we don't allocate this, and if it's not enough, at least we'll have Chapter 90 funds coming in next year to finish it.
Right.
As opposed to waiting to finish it and taking all the Chapter 90 funds for next year and allocating it all towards Central Street.
So the real question that comes up then, in the process of doing that, right, does it cost us more money to fix some of these other roads 3 years from now, 4 years from now?
Well, I think if you look at it right now, we're talking about money that we're not even talking about an appropriation yet.
Right.
We haven't appropriated a dime. This is from within
Yeah.
available revenues right now. So if we still want to stick to the game plan of $200,000, then you stay on track. And when you get a windfall like this, you earmark it towards a project that,
All right, so by putting up the $200,000, this gets done anyway, is what you're saying?
it's done anyway. Or even some amount less, right? Unless you don't want to
Yeah.
spend anything this year.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Don't put
I'm
up
in
the
favor of
200,000, don't put up the 200,000.
No,
Yeah, I don't think I'm in favor of that right now.
no, I would say definitely do the 200,000.
You know, but basically what I'm suggesting is take the $350,000 windfall that we got
Right.
through the legislature and earmark it
The Central Street.
towards Central Street.
And then appropriate $200,000 to the road program. And then he can knock off these roads. Because if we don't, like you say, Bob, then it's gonna cost us more money to complete these down the road.
I have no way of knowing, because when I looked at all these lists, they bounced around as to what are the most critical roads. I have to leave that up to the DPW.
I think what he's indicated, if we appropriate $200,000, this front page,
Is
Well,
what
again,
you-
I think Dick's recommendation would probably change because that's not what he's asked to do. When he came up with these, striking Gordon and adding these other three was based upon another scenario. It wasn't based upon earmarking these other funds for Central Street. Correct?
why would that?
What I would anticipate is, when I complete the pavement management program, we'll have numerical ratings for every town road, such that ratings going forward about subjectiveness about what's worse versus the other.
Right, yeah.
We'll have a number, I recommend, here's the worst numbers, blank, 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 or here's the ones that need crack sealing, or it would be more numerical based than the subjectiveness we're talking about.
All right, and when do we anticipate having that study completed?
Spring.
Springtime? So then, why do we have to
Why can't we just vote to
What-
appropriate 200,000?
appropriate $200,000 and then come back with a list in the springtime when you're going to do it anyway?
To me, that would make sense, because, again, I was fitting in roads to a dollar
Right.
amount.
Right.
And that we have, again, based on what I heard from Dave had his own rating scheme, how he came up with them, I'm picking off of his list.
Right.
However, he didn't give me a numerical rating, so is one worse than the other? It's a subjective call.
I don't have a problem with the list changing.
Right, so,
I would prefer that we focus on those roads that, by redoing them, we're gonna spend less money than letting them totally
so
deteriorate, and then we'll spend more.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that we, again, earmark the $334,000, which was set aside for Tower Hill, or $335,000, earmark those funds for completion of Central Street, towards the completion of the Central Street project, and then support appropriating $200,000 at the October town meeting, and the determination as to where those funds will be used will be done after we get the study completed. Then we'll know when.
Throw
Then,
the $2,700 in there too.
what's that?
May as well throw the other $2,700 in there, so we know where it's gonna go.
What's the 27?
That's the remaining balance, so you may as well.
You don't want to run yourself dry. You look cushion. But, and then based upon the the study that we get back. It'll tell us where the funds could best be utilized.
That's
Rather-
fine. I don't have a problem with that. I would hope Charles Street would stay there. And for the only reason is that I know that residents on that street, going back a number of years, I know it predates you, Dick, but for a number of years, they were,
I thought I should just shut it off, but it didn't.
on multiple occasions, they were, in essence, in my opinion, promised that that road was going to get done for various reasons, and it hasn't get done. It hasn't been accomplished for, I guess, a variety of reasons. But I would hope whatever list you come back with in the spring
You want on the list, we'll have it on the list.
would include Charles Street.
Well, let's see what the study says.
But it's well documented that the residents on Charles Street,
Well, I know, I grew up in the neighborhood. Yeah.
for years, they were told, next year, next year, next year. I think 20 years later, or 15 years later, next year has arrived. So I would hope that's the street that remains.
But again, you're suggesting 25% of the allocation on that one small section of road. There's 4 houses affected.
I understand, but I think there's
Okay.
extenuating circumstances surrounding that particular street. That predates Mr. Cannavale, I understand it. But the residents have been told that that was going to get done a number of years ago. It hasn't been completed. So I hope it remains. It's $54,000. This is the list he provided to us. If we had appropriated $200,000, if we didn't come up with changes this evening, I would assume that's a street that would have gotten done, so.
We're going to be spending $25,000 to get the, how much is it? $50,000 to get the engineering study done. Let's see what it says.
It will be on the list. Just,
Thank you.
you asked for it, and it'll be done.
Thank you. If there's a motion. Second.
Motion is, right, it's just the $335,000 to be earmarked towards completion of Central Street and support an additional $200,000 for road improvement programs.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That was easy.
Oh, we haven't voted on the 200 yet.
We have,
Yeah,
Oh, we just did. It was part of that motion.
That was part of the motion.
So
It was
it takes
for the
care of-
200,000,
takes care of number 10.
$200,000, and then once we get the engineering study back, he'll give us the list.
Next item, water enterprise. Replace 2 backhoes with 1 backhoe
Correct.
for $110,000.
Recommendation is to borrow.
I'm fine.
Take any idea what you'll get in terms of trade-in value on the 2
That's
backhoes?
already included.
That's included in the 110?
What is the water enterprise debt?
How it looks, what's outstanding, what piece would you like to know? What the...
Capacity.
Capacity, what's the difference between this year and next?
And is
Sure.
it dropping?
It is dropping. It's going from 502 to 405 to 394 to 318.
Yeah, the debt services.
It's going down.
Most of the construction from the early 90s is finally dropping off the table. So there's a consistent drop in the debt service for the water.
Borrowing, there's no issue.
Consensus is...
I'm good.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Briscoe?
I don't even know what I'm approving, but, I mean, backhoe, okay. I thought we'd get a little more information on this stuff than just a backhoe. There's 1,000 backhoes out there. I thought we'd get, is this typically the way we get it?
I'm sorry?
I'm approving $110,000 and I'm not even sure what I'm approving.
There was a proposal made at last week's meeting that there was a presentation made on the backhoe. I can give you detail on it right now. It's replacement of backhoe number 61, which is a 1995, and number 63, which is a 2000. Again, the summary that was provided to the board was replacing these. There's a documentation in terms of what our costs have been to date for repairs to both of these vehicles. The cost of repairs to these have been, let's see, a total of $65,551 since they came into place. So The goal was to get rid of 2 and replace it with 1 vehicle, so there's a net loss in the fleet of 1 vehicle.
Mr. Chairman, I think the question, Greg, is more of the $110,000, did it come out of nowhere, or did it come off of town bid list
It's
for
an
a
estimate
specific
provided by
model?
it's an estimate. We'd
What
have
do
to-
you-
Right, we talked to a vendor, got an estimate for one particular vendor. We compared it to other vendors, so we think the price to buy it is about right. We got quotes for the trade-in of the 2 existing vehicles, and that's how the 110 was arrived at. So there's a cut sheet, I have that, no one asked for it. So
But is there a
it's
way to
Well,
describe it?
I'm sorry, Bob. Just going forward, I think you got a sense of the board. The board appreciates more information, not less. So going forward, I know I, for one, would like to have that beforehand. So I think you should err on providing it, not providing it. So just point of information.
Is there accessories involved in it? Are we buying, is this thing equipped fully, 110 included, or is it included? We have to buy all these other accessories with it? I wanna see it all, so I can't vote for it, because I don't know what I'm voting for.
I'm sorry, Bob. Cut you off.
Okay.
I know you need it, but I don't know what you're asking me to give you the.
the backup.
I get it.
So we can move on to the next one.
When we delay action on that until the DPW comes back with more information. Town buildings, starting with town hall security and access upgrades, cost $51,000, and the plan is to take it from available funds. Any further discussion?
Any questions for Greg?
Yes, sir.
Greg, there's a piece of something installed, that I don't know whether it's being used or not. Is that going away and a complete new system being put in? Or?
No. The intent is to finish the rekeying of the exterior doors, so there will be 3 doors operated off of a fob system, which is an electronic key. And those would all be interconnected into a single unit, which we would then program. We have over 55 keys that are issued for the exterior doors at Town Hall, so that will be replaced by fobs. And we'd utilize the equipment that's already been installed here. So that's the goal, is to continue to utilize the equipment we have, finish the project, and move on with it.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is, on a key fob system, generally it's run off of some kind of a computer
Yep.
module or something. Is that in place now?
Yes, that's exactly what we would do, is we'd run it off of a computer system that's in place right now.
So the existing fob on this front door is tied into a computer system now?
No, not at all.
So it's just,
The hardware has been installed, but what we haven't done is it hasn't been connected to a central system at this point, and we need additional funds to be able to do
all right, so
that.
the funds are for the central system. And then you mentioned some cameras,
Yes,
and that's also in,
yes. So there are 3 components to this project. The first is the rekeying and issuance of fobs to all of the exterior doors. The second phase is the installation of touchpads in certain areas of the building to restrict access for people getting behind the counter, as we would say, through open doorways. And then the third piece would be the installation of security cameras in certain locations in the building.
and that's all in the $51,000?
Correct. I can give you a breakdown. The estimate for the security cameras and the plexiglass walls was $22,000. The interior access pads and rekeying was at a cost of $8,000. And then the final component, which is the completion of the fob system, would be for a total of $15,000.
Any further, Bob? Mr. Prescott?
So the security cameras,
Yes, sir.
where are the monitors going to be associated with the security cameras?
We'd run it through into the building. It wouldn't be, so to speak, monitors. We'd have a DVR player that would be going, so we wouldn't
Just for
actually have.
recording?
Yes, we wouldn't actually have active monitors.
Recording for what purpose?
For the purposes of protecting the employees and protecting the public.
But at that point, if there's an issue,
I think from what we've heard, it's more for evidentiary purposes.
Correct.
If something were to happen, to identify who the particular person was, what they did. That's my understanding of the presentation last week.
Correct.
There's not going to be a security staff sitting and monitoring these video
No.
cameras. It's all going to go on a, as the town administrator said, DVD, and it's for that particular purpose.
Thank you.
Is that,
Thanks, Dick.
Thanks, Dick.
I mean, if it's just for having evidence in the event of an issue, I mean, you're going to have, to me, it seems like an expensive thing to do if that's all we're going to do with it. Seems
well,
like
this-
we're-
it's part of that 51,000, is my understanding.
It is.
It's a portion of that. And also, I see it as a deterrent factor, too. I think it may
It's about
stop
22,000.
Correct.
someone from acting up, just by
Last week's.
Will we have,
the mere presence of the video camera.
well, will they have the ability, I'm more concerned about giving them the ability that if there's an issue, they hit a button or they can get help right away.
Correct. And that would be a panic alarm system that we would look to complete as part of this project, too.
So that's included in that.
Correct.
Yes. So go directly to the police for 24-hour coverage.
I heard something different. My understanding is because of the wiring and technology in the building, it has to go to some sort of alarm company first. who would then,
Call the police.
right.
Yes, you are correct. But they would get the notice 24 hours a day.
Mr.
I
O'Leary.
still have some concerns in relation to what exactly is going to be the plexiglass counter. Floor to ceiling. Again, I understand the issues, and I'm sympathetic, but I guess I'm not as sympathetic as others. And to me, I don't mind some sort of a deterring barrier, but I still have an aversion to floor to ceiling, counter to ceiling. Talk through to the bank teller. At some of these other bigger banks, and other banks don't now, actually, they're getting away from it. But,
Right.
We've talked to different banks and different communities, and it varies widely.
I'm sorry?
It varies widely what the
Oh,
current
I
standard
know it
is.
does,
For
and
my
if you look at the
credit
newer
union, I thought
banks,
they
if you
took
look
it
at the
away
newer
altogether.
banks, it doesn't happen. So it's, I just don't want to, I want to give some people a sense of security and comfort, but by the same token, I don't want to detract from people's interfacing with our employees with our employees, and conversely, I want the public to come in and feel as though they're being treated fairly and kindly, and not so standoffish. So, so again, the original proposal last week we were talking about was something just to deter them from being able to get over the counter, and then it evolved into up to the ceiling.
I wasn't particularly in favor of that either.
So
Nor I. Matter of fact, we would review what options are available, and certainly to the extent we can avoid floor to ceiling or counter to ceiling, we would look to do that.
Anything further on that item? Consensus? Board members?
reluctantly, okay. Yes, I'm for this.
Yes.
So yes. Town Hall IT and Route 10 expansion.
Can we go back to
Oh,
the,
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we provided a document from Schmidt Equipment on a 2012 Deere 410K backhoe loader. A lot of specifics in here.
It's basically a medium-sized backhoe. When we actually go to bid on this, it could be a multitude of pieces of equipment, but around this size, and these are the typical things we'd be looking for.
Dick, this is a state bid list number.
They're on a
Stated-
state bid list. I think CAT is on a state bid list, and I'm not sure about some of the other vendors. Like Joe, you mentioned somebody last week. I don't believe
So-
they are.
when we go buy something from the state bid list, we don't go out to bid, right?
No, you get an exact number too. If it's on state bid list, you just go to it and then you know what you want or what they provide, and then if you want to buy it, you know what the number is right off the get-go.
Actually,
Otherwise-
But you
go
were
to bid.
talking about a different different
Otherwise, you go
manufacturer.
to bid.
right. We have gone to state bid list and played one vendor, got off the other, and gotten better prices than the state bid list.
I see.
For example, the 10-wheel dump truck, I budgeted $240, we got it for $211. It's a $29,000 savings. So you can use the state bid list to work these guys against each other, get a better number. We did the same thing for the 2 water vehicles in the spring. We brought those in 10,000 under the estimate by doing the same thing. So this is a specification for a medium-sized wheeled backhoe. So it would be this or something like this. We currently have John Deere equipment, we're very happy with it. Our mechanics would like to standardize on it, but if we can get a better price, say for Caterpillar, which is a premium piece of equipment, we've already talked to them, then we may consider that.
So it's the intent of getting a backhoe, an optional snow bucket, and what's a Wayne Roy hydraulic thumb and boom protection plate?
Wayne Roy is the brand of the bucket on the back of the thing, but having a thumb come over, if you pick up a tree, say we have another tree down situation, you need equipment to pick up trees and move them quickly, it's very useful for that. So it's kind of the bucket and it has like a thumb that comes over, like a hand, basically.
Oh, okay.
So since we don't have a dedicated tree department and typical equipment that Viking has, this will allow us ability to quickly clear roads for public safety.
I'm good.
This is much better for me to now understand a little bit more what you were thinking about, especially with the options and stuff like that. Thank you.
Consensus?
I think we're hilarious.
No, I said I'm good. I'm fine.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Yep.
Yes. All right, back to town building, town hall IT and room 10 expansion cost $46,500 from available funds.
Project was broken into 2 phases, $26,500 for reconstructing and renovating, making improvements to room 10, which includes additional office space and also improvements to the HVAC system. The remaining $20,000 would be expended in dedicating service to the existing IT space, construction of installation of new HVAC, and backup HVAC system together with anti-static flooring, electrical, phone, and IT wire work that's required to bring that space into compliance.
Questions?
So basically, the intent is to not move any of the IT equipment, the wiring or anything within that room.
We considered that, but the cost was just off
Yeah,
the
right.
chart. So we're going to
And,
leave, basically, that
and
existing room is a server
Make
room.
adequate space for the new additional equipment that's going to be purchased as part of Munis and the documentation system, and fix the cooling system in there, which is,
It is not designed for its current use.
Turn that room into an equipment room, which is the goal.
And also make space for
And make
2
space.
personnel, and then you're gonna move the veterans
Personnel
agent.
and...
Correct.
Yeah, gotta move the veterans agent, right?
With this Munis program, there's a large amount of stuff that comes in, just storage for some of the stuff that's all over town hall now. If you remember,
and my understanding,
room 5.
excuse me, my understanding was that in this office area for IT, which will include space for the 2 people now instead of 1, a doorway from there to get into that computer room?
No doorway.
No doorway?
No doorway.
Come out and go in, okay.
Do it the old-fashioned way.
Walk through the wall?
You just walk right around.
No.
We figure
Sorry.
we don't want to give up 1 inch of space in that room.
Okay.
Consensus?
Yes.
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 Yes. Flint Library, exterior repair and repainting, cost $12,000, available funds.
Yes. Yep, we had the presentation.
Cost of keeping our historic old building up to date, its replacement of the rotted wood and doing some additional painting work around it.
Is this mostly window sills?
No, a lot of it's the railings in the front are constantly vandalized. And the backside, looking at the front over to the left rear, is always in the dark. That tends to, the paint tends to break down quicker. If we don't get to it, it causes rot. So it's, John is very good about keeping things up, and he thinks this is a high priority thing to get done.
I know I brought it up last week, and you said the chances are, and I know my good friend Steve said chances are slim and none, but could you at least look into the possibility of using maybe cellular PVC, and so we wouldn't have to look at replacing that again in the future?
We try to work with HCC to do things that have a longer lifespan. Sometimes we are successful, sometimes we are not.
So we'll try again this year.
We have a fiberglass flagpole now downtown.
Yes, we
versus
do.
wood one. That
And
was a
they
big
were
fight.
very helpful and very
Yeah.
quick to assist us in that.
And
Consensus?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Next item, cemetery. Should parks be here too, though? I don't know.
No, it's cemetery.
Just cemetery.
Correct.
Replace the 1997 61-inch
Yeah.
scab turf tiger. I believe it's a lawnmower. Cost $14,500. Available funds. What's the item you're going to replace it with?
something,
Same
a
thing.
newer version.
Not another 1997?
We can go for the $52,000 lawnmower if you want. They got
Oh, I
one
think you
video.
tried that last year.
All right.
Someone got one of those
Yeah.
last year.
I'm good.
Any discussion?
No, good.
Yes?
Yes.
Consensus? Yes. Hillview Commission, we've already, have we actually
No.
not taken a motion? Hillview, 7th Fairway, equipment function facility, $400,000, borrow $300,000, and $100,000 from retained earnings.
Sounds good to me.
Any other questions, discussion? Consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And we've taken out the school, specifically the little school retaining wall, because we don't have a reliable cost estimate.
Yes, we put it in the form of a separate warrant article, which will allow you flexibility going into town meeting to appropriate an amount of money.
What's being done about coming up with a plan to deal with that at this point?
We've got two engineering firms that we will be in contact with the schools relative to putting forth a proposal. I think the schools indicated they had $10,000 available to have an engineer come in and study it. Dick has been in touch with two firms and put them in touch with Wayne Hardacre at the school department.
And they know the deadline.
So, I'm not going to completely rely on my good friend, Mr. Fode, but I believe he has an adjusted number of $1,537,644. I think I'm going to rely more heavily on my finance director, but I don't know if she's up
Is
to that
that
point.
combination?
That's a
total?
combination, that's a total.
Excluding the roadway, because we voted on that separately. Public Works Town Roadway Program, we already voted on the 200,000, so that's not inclusive of that. So it's 1.7 million total.
Including the $200,000 we just approved for the town roadway program, it'll be $1,737,644. Combination of borrowing and available funds.
Did we come up with a number for the additional various hardware and software that we were discussing?
I think we left it at the 91,
left it at the 91.
354
Yep.
as a result of discussions we had earlier in executive
Sure.
session.
I just need to adjust my schedule to match that.
Yeah. What's the breakout again for borrow versus available funds?
Well, come on,
You guys are supposed to be good at this.
Well,
I'd like to get an update.
I think the finance director may.
I can send you guys an updated
Yes,
sheet.
that would be good.
That's right. Thank you very much.
So,
Time for the motion.
am I reading each one individually with the amounts?
I don't think you have to do the amounts, but read each one.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend the following items for the fiscal year 2013 capital improvement plan. IT various hardware software, IT Munis software, IT disaster recovery backup hardware, IT computer equipment replacement program, fire Class A pumper, water enterprise replaced 2 backhoes with 1, town buildings, security access upgrades, town buildings, IT and room 10 expansion, town buildings, library exterior painting, cemetery parks, replace Skag Turf Tiger, and Hillview Commission 7th Fairway Equipment Function Facility.
I would suggest that we just add a sentence referring to the document that was supplied with the amounts and the sources of funding.
Okay. Amounts and sources of funding can be found in the 5-year project summary, fiscal year 13.
Is that what you referred to?
Yep.
Yes? Yeah.
Mhm.
We didn't change anything there.
No,
I suppose there's other items that need to be deleted that,
but
Yeah, but it's all.
I spelled it all out.
Yeah,
okay, all
spelled
right.
out.
Did you get a second, Nico?
Second, yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Unanimous. I know I brought it up at the beginning of the discussion of capital, but I'd like to try to get a feel of where the board sits concerning my idea of having to establish what I would term a capital review committee that starts looking at capital, I would say no later than the spring, the April-May timeframe, so we could, instead of coming here this evening and getting additional documentation, this is done and vetted early in the process, so the board gets, I would like to see the board get the whole capital plan a month in advance of this evening, so it's time to review, time to formulate questions instead of doing it on the fly. I think it's got to be at least a start to do this process in a better fashion.
Well, I don't disagree with the idea. I think that we've made substantial progress by getting to the capital plan before the warrant goes out. So we've taken one step, and taking another step next year to get it done sooner. And a subcommittee or something, a capital subcommittee would be a good idea, because I think there's a fair amount of digging and everything, and then it would be a much smoother process. I would suggest if you do that there would be, there'd have to be somebody, maybe it's the finance director or some of the finance committee, and then I would assume they would meet with Greg and department heads to pull out sufficient details so that this process would go a lot smoother.
That's similar to what I envisioned. I don't know how.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's much needed. We talked about it.
Concerning that.
Actually, for the last couple of years, we've kicked around doing this better, trying to find a better way to do it.
Mr. Fode?
Yeah, well, absolutely, I agree.
Mr. O'Leary?
Yeah, if the administration can find it feasible to work it in, I mean, if you recall, during the budget season in the springtime, they're pretty busy. It's just, what we're doing is we're adding another focus at the busiest time of year for them. I mean, I'm in favor of doing it, but the calendar seems to work against us all the time. So it's like, is there a better time or a good time? Maybe we should be talking about doing capital, at the April town meeting and talking about it now. So that's ready for the April town meeting. Move the calendar that way as far as doing the appropriations, but giving us more time to actually look at the capital plan when we're not looking at the budget. See, to me, we're doubling up again on them as far as.
We are.
So I like the idea of moving the calendar around, but we just have to make sure that we're not overburdening them when we're really trying to balance the budget, and take the capital, put the capital where it really truly does belong. The only reason it's in the October town meeting is because over the years, we haven't been able to balance the budget. We want to find out what we have left. So what this would do is this would postpone our capital projects 6 months for the first year, and then you'd be on the regular cycle and have everything, all the capital in with the regular budget, where it should be and where it used to be for years. And all we're going to do is just move the calendar of looking at it to a different time. So I like the idea and the concept. I just don't know if we're going to be overburdening ourselves, not just them, but even ourselves, of taking it all on at the same time when we're really all over them to come up with a balanced budget. So I like it. Just move the calendar differently as far as when we're going to do the appropriating.
Mr. Prisco?
I take a little different spin on it. The timing on it, that's a debate that we could have, but I would like to see this group actually just come up with some standardized approaches on how we do it. Standardized formats on how the spreadsheets look, the information, how it's presented, what's being borrowed, what's coming out of available funds. I'd like to see something right up front in this whole format of what we actually did, like Greg actually handed it out the other day, what we borrowed from our October town meeting last year, or the capital items that we went out and acquired, where we were with that, and see what's left over. How much money did we actually leave at the, go ahead. You
No,
wanna say something?
no, I don't disagree with you. I just think that is what will naturally come out of
Right,
this group.
and we'll help build some efficiency, so we'll ultimately, hopefully, we'll help our staff say, okay, now I have a template, all I have to do is plug and play, put the right information in, build the presentations, we'll have a standardized format, and hopefully it'll make it easy for them to get the job done with everything else they're doing. I don't want to add more burden on it, that's for sure.
Abby, Don, kid away.
I like Steve's idea about putting it back in the spring primarily because, as you know, there are a number of things that in fact should be in the budgets of the individual departments as opposed to in the capital budget, and this certainly is bringing that to the forefront. I also think that it's easier to talk about capital when you're also looking at their operating budget. So I think there are a lot of valid reasons for putting it in the spring. If you can figure out how to pull it up,
Yeah, I think so.
and I also understand there's a real small window of opportunity between spring and fall. But this town has some fairly non-traditional dates on their calendar for spring and fall town meeting. Typically, fall meeting comes a little later than ours. Our spring town meeting was always much earlier.
Right.
Yeah, it was April, now it's
It was
June.
April.
So
was
stuff has
June.
been moved around. So I understand the concern that there's not much time between spring and fall. I think that spring and you start looking at it right after fall town meeting makes sense.
So
I
Steve, you
think
thought,
after you get through the first iteration of this, where you're gonna, where it's gonna be 5 or a 10-year plan, you've really thought out what's happening. And the next fire engine is coming on, so you know that in 6 years that's coming up. And once you build this, the rolling it forward with periodic meetings with department heads, I think will make it a lot easier. But it's not push a button right away. There's a lot of work, I think, that's going to go into developing this, a lot of thought to gathering the universe of items that ought to be included and then prioritizing.
so Steve, you thought would be to start looking at capital, say, a year from now for the following spring.
You can actually start looking at it now.
Look at it now.
Start looking at it now. And again, what we've been doing with the capital projects, as you're well aware, is using the residual funds, once we get things certified, to handle them. So it's not too soon to start laying it out, laying the groundwork for it and laying it all out. And then see what come June 30th, when you close the books, you know what you have. But it won't be until a year from April when we actually do it, unless there's something very pressing that you would address in October. Otherwise, we need to get it on the appropriation cycle. So the first year is going to be the biggest hurdle as far as putting things off until April. But once that's done, you're on the cycle, you're actually handling your entire budget, you're using prior year's monies and free cash at the April town meeting, not just to, balance the upcoming budget, but also it will give us a little bit more time to really analyze what do we want to do with our reserves. And between October and June, a lot of things happen. So it's just going to be, the first year's going to be difficult to get over. It may take us a couple of cycles to get over to get to our goal of putting it all at the same town meeting. And then October town meeting should last about 20 minutes. Yeah. But yeah, so to me, in that way, from a timing standpoint, the administration has time and our personnel has time to really sit down and analyze it properly and give the necessary time, instead of being under the gun, to present us with a balanced budget and forecast what it's going to be. So this way he will have what our numbers are, and then a few months to think about it some more.
Does anyone have an issue with going about it that way?
I don't have an issue with taking a look at capital in advance. The issue is, in terms of presenting it at town meeting and have a balanced budget, you're gonna have to, as Steve said, postpone, which I think is not necessarily practical, or make some judgments as to what you're going to fund based on your ability to estimate available funds in the form of
But if
free
you look at
cash.
if you look at what we're
And
doing
then in
here,
October, I mean, what you could do in October is if it doesn't come to fruition, you can always make a budget adjustment, a capital adjustment.
if you look at what we just did tonight, I mean, we have $1,737,000 that we just allocated, of which $510,000 is going to be borrowed through the enterprise funds. Or, no, excuse me. You're going to have $410,000 from the enterprise funds bonded. The rest of it's from either retained earnings or available funds. So those available funds, we're just not going to spend them for 11 months in the first year. But again, something comes up, we have October to address it, and we'll also have a pretty good firm handle as to what our available funds are anyway. But I think we need to get back on the cycle and again, give us enough time to really forecast and look what we need to do as far as our capital plans. So I like your idea, just think, if we're going to do it, we need to switch the calendar as to when the appropriations come.
I'll work with the town administrator. Can we get a proposal to present? Thank you. Mr. Messeri.
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at the clock. It's
Right.
9:45. We had the fire department sitting here.
Oh,
You had discussed sale of additional town-owned land. I'd recommend, for starters, that we, I don't know what the process would be. We've tabled it for now.
Well, town hall land's not going to come up until after ALS is discussed.
Now, what I'm saying is that, based on the hours and what's left on the agenda,
And at that point, we
a couple of
can,
critical things, I think we should put it off to our next meeting.
we can do that too.
That would be my recommendation.
I'm more than happy to do that for the third time.
When it comes up,
Second,
yeah.
third time.
When it
There's no
comes
one
up.
here anyway.
Oh, right. Anyone object to that?
What's that?
Putting on the discussion regarding town-owned land?
You can't take that up until we talk about the other
all
stuff. So, no,
I think it's a good idea. I think it'll pass, but we're going to take up, how about taking the update on advanced life support services out of order, according to the schedule? So, I was wondering why the chief and the deputy chief are still here. I forgot the item. Gentlemen, if you'd like to come up.
I don't have a PowerPoint tonight. I have this is generated from Helen, from the Department's Administrative Assistant. It's on the ALS funds. Sorry.
It's okay. I can reach.
Basically shows,
Thank you, Chief.
You haven't having it for finance.
no. But I know the numbers, so, yeah.
No, take it, because
Well, I know the numbers.
it's okay, you don't want to,
Okay. I was asked to come by town administrator, and I'm not really sure what you want to know, so I figured you might want to know how much money we have made since we started ALS. We came up with these figures here, and I'm open for any questions that you might have.
So, if I read this correctly, for correct me if I'm wrong, for ALS to date, is that the $41,502.87? Is that the number that we've received in revenue?
Okay, if you
I'm
go
just
down to the
flipping.
bottom, if you go down to the bottom of the page,
Page 1?
page 1,
Yes.
you'll see the amount that we collected for North Reading ALS, Medicare, non-Medicare, and that says prior, before, and collected after the startup. So as I understand this document, if you take a look at the first highlighted box, it's $6,000 and some change. That's what we would have made without being ALS. So the ALS would have been provided by Action Ambulance Service. We would have made $6,000.
Okay.
The box down the bottom is what we made with the ALS startup. So we took in that time period, and you'll look, the time period is very small, from April 10th, I believe, my birthday, to the 26th of June, we made an extra $52,000. So as you can see, we're only receiving monies up to June. It's still very early in the process, and we're 4 months into it. We're having some issues with insurance companies. They don't mail out the monies as fast as you would like.
Can I ask you a question regarding insurance companies and mailing out money? Have you had the experience where they've mailed the money directly to
3 or 4
patient?
times? 3 or 4 times? It's happened more than once, how's that? Yes.
And how has that resolved, if it has?
Well, in this particular case, we have to report some people to the collections bureaus, but I'm not sure if we've received money from individuals.
It takes about 4 months,
Yeah.
once the bill goes out, to realize, the money coming in. Well, that's according to Comstock.
And has it been one particular insurance company, or
Well,
is it across the board?
I
Or do you know?
I can tell you that one insurance company doesn't pay us at all. Do you know what insurance company that is?
That was thought to be not true.
I
need
do.
Further research.
Oh, you know what that is?
Yeah, it's Harvard Pilgrim.
Yeah, our insurance providers.
Because their spigot is a little slower, it doesn't mean that they're not gonna pay, it just means that the spigot.
Yeah, and Barry said that that's been changed. So we get these reports from Comstock frequently, but they're very hard to understand. Takes a lot of going through the packets.
They can't break it down, BLS, ALS?
But they did, and there's what's allowable and what we billed, what's allowable, and what's actually been received.
Right.
And then from what's been received, we renegotiated with our backup providers.
Mhm.
So they have a take, now that we're billing all the ALS calls, whereas prior to Action was billing them because we weren't the provider.
We cut out the triangle. The triangle's gone.
So if we do the call with Action, or Action does the call, we're splitting whatever we take in, but it comes in sometimes in bits and pieces, so it's hard to get a clear handle on that.
Are we paying Action?
Oh, yeah.
So we collect those funds and then pay Action?
Right.
Yes.
They give us a bill? Is
Yeah.
that how it works? So,
Action.
They give us a bill which is more or less a placeholder, it's not,
Yeah.
because it's 50% of what we
Yeah.
collect, so they don't know what we're gonna collect.
Action, Armstrong, Northeast Ambulance. We're in the process of setting up an ALS agreement with the town of Middleton. It will be the same thing, and that's what we're doing. 50/50
so,
split.
Mr. Chairman, so basically what you presented here, the column isn't wide enough to read it. So that $6,024 is what we would have realized between April 10th and June, whatever, 26th, 3 days before my birthday, the 29th, is what we would have realized if we had utilized Action.
Correct.
And instead, it was $58,902 is what we've collected.
Right, and you subtract the...
So the difference is the $52,000 additional revenue.
Right,
as a
additional
result of-
revenue. Yep.
And then, and I
But
know,
what's important to remember is you're always 4 months behind. So in October, we're still gonna be 4 months behind. It's gonna take that amount of time. We're making revenue, we're getting it, but you just have to wait for it.
We understand.
and then, what percentage of our runs now are ALS? What are we running at?
Do you have that?
Just curious, I know we're not totally up to speed on everything.
Well, we're
getting
providing ALS almost
50/50.
50%, but of those 50%, 80% of the time, we're providing North Reading Fire Department ALS. So of the 50% that's actually ALS, 80% of the time, our own medics are staffing the call. And we'll have 3 guys or 4 guys starting paramedic school on September 10th. So that number's gonna go up even higher. We're gonna be using less and less as our backup. September 10th is correct, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Bill, just to clarify, the total insurance received is actually money we've received?
Yeah,
That's the way I understand it.
So this is a cash basis, this isn't accrual, this is what's owed to us, this is
What we
we've taken in.
received.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so this is not, totally what we billed is a bigger number?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, but we
What
don't
we
have...
billed is a bill.
We don't have that on here at this
No.
point? Okay.
What we've billed is a bigger number, what we're allowed is a bigger number than that.
Because they don't know what they're gonna
Because
receive.
you don't know what you're gonna receive.
No, that I know, yeah,
So, yes to both of you, yes to your question.
okay.
As far as what you've billed and what's the average, what it's coming out at as far as your collection rate on the, when you're billing, you're billing, that's 100%, but after all said and done, what are we getting? 75% of that, or 80% of the monies, or
I think our collection rate is in the 90s.
of baseball, about 100% of your
High
billing?
80s, maybe low 90s, but
So I mean, the insurance companies aren't beating you back? You're billing them at a rate that it appears as though it's reasonable, they're gonna be reimbursing us?
Yes.
Good.
The
So
killer
far,
is,
Yeah, so far,
but
that's
that could
good.
change.
Yeah,
the killer is the Medicare.
right.
Right.
That's, we collect, at least before the numbers show, we were collecting about half of what we billed, or less.
Well, there is one other thing that we should talk about with the ALS. When we came up with these figures, it was before the budget was submitted. ComStar, we renegotiated our contract with them and reduced it from 5% to 4%. With that, where we're collecting more money, it's actually gonna end up costing us more. That really wasn't figured into the budget number, and it's possible that at the end of June, we may need to alter for things that we were unable to, to actually prepare for.
I'm a little slow, it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
We reduced our percentage payment to Comstar, but it's gonna
Right,
cost
but
us
because
more.
now we're collecting much more money, it's
We're
costing
billing
us
more
more,
money.
we're billing more.
So you get charged by.
Right, we get charged. So when we did the budget, it was left at the current rate because we weren't providing ALS. So I'm just saying now that it's possible towards June that we might have a little shortfall on the billing for the ALS number.
That's okay, we should have some money available to.
I'm just letting you,
Yeah, right,
I'm just
thank you,
letting
yeah.
you know.
All right.
Should we make an...
I'm slow.
I'll let him explain it, because I am too.
I'm real slow tonight.
I'll explain it to you.
Go ahead.
They pay a fee for service, so they pay that company every time they submit a bill. That
Okay.
company charges them,
Okay.
okay? They renegotiate it and lower the percentage.
So you're saying that budget item
But-
for Comstar?
Needs to be a little higher.
Right, because
I
they
got it.
based it on a
Not
quantity
bad, not bad.
of bills.
Stop,
they
stop,
No,
let's
stop,
get
stop.
it.
I got it, I got it. Before I leave.
Or at least he thinks he has it, so
So
let's quit.
it's possible.
That's all that counts. I think I got it.
It's
We're good.
possible that in June. we
But that's
may
a good
need to-
thing.
Yes, it is.
All right, okay,
So-
as long as it's a good thing at the bottom.
Any other questions about the program you'd like? At this point, it's running smooth, it's running well.
You just, one thing you mentioned last week about, I guess, sending 4 guys out, you get an ambulance call, you're sending 2 guys in an ambulance. I guess this is when you have 5 guys on a shift?
We have one group with 5 guys, yep,
Okay. So you're sending, an ambulance goes, and then you're sending a truck with 2 guys.
correct.
And The reason for that, again, is,
If they get out on a call, we had a call for a house fire, we can do a house fire and we can do a medical.
well, why are you sending 4 guys? You got an ambulance call.
Well, I thought I explained that. The medic that's that's working on that group is being trained. So 2 guys have to go in the back of the ambulance. So we actually, even though there's 4 guys
So
there,
it's
you
3
need
and 1.
3 guys in the ambulance to go, because one of them is being precepted.
But if you have, all right, what? Okay, so you need a guy to drive it.
Right.
It's a little slow. All right,
That's
guy
okay.
to drive it, 2 guys in the back.
Right.
Okay.
My goal, I know you're not gonna wanna hear this, but my goal was to have 5 guys 24/7, and every time there's an ambulance
We've
call.
discussed that
Yeah,
numerous times.
and we'll continue.
And maybe some future date,
Well,
We
I'm
may-
hoping that the numbers are gonna allow that to happen.
we'll see,
I hope so.
we'll see.
Yeah, at some point, and it may be still premature, I would like to see, what our additional cost, we knew upfront going into this that it was gonna be expensive as far as the training and coverage and all the rest, but at some point, when you see it stabilizing, I'd like to see some sort of analysis as to what the return on it is. I mean, obviously, we're paying an additional stipend to the men, we're going out and getting the additional education and providing additional service, and we're billing more. I'd like to see what the win is, here, or if it's just gonna support the department in providing an enhanced, response, that's okay. If it's paying its own way, fine with me,
Steve,
Yeah.
you might recall on the first round, before we really got the thing going, and we made the presentation on the revenue and the scheduling of additional people based on the revenue plan, Bill had recommended that we be even more conservative, and that the plan was to hire just the one additional person, not add any additional people until for certain the
12
costs were
months, I
going to be
believe,
covered.
tried
And,
to get.
and then our current firemen, which initially resisted the training, now have signed up
Right.
and are scheduled. So it's going on in a little different pathway.
Yeah.
But I think Bill's approach is guaranteeing that the revenue is going to lead the cost rather than the other way around, which is a good thing.
Mr. Prisco, do you have a question?
Yes, the manning projections, when you're gonna be bringing staff on. I know you don't have that presentation with you tonight, but I would like to get that. Or it doesn't have to be tonight, maybe even in about 3 months from now. I'd like you to come in, and I'd like to see a presentation. The way the ALS committee had presented it to us, I'd like it to be presented again, but with some actuals of where you are in the process. I think it would be just good for us to check on where we are in the progress with your manning.
And for the next budget season, you may be talking about something partway through the year.
Correct.
I think that's,
Anyway, so.
I'd let them have the whole year. And
We-
we started in April.
Remember,
and it-
we're already 4 months behind.
Budget. That's the
So,
thing.
I mean,
4 months, a collection of revenues.
in collection of revenues, and
Yeah,
I
but you
thought
could-
that's what was generating our staffing, was with how much money we were gonna collect. So in October, we're only 8 months into it. Not only that, we're gonna have 3 or 4 guys in paramedic school. So I'm not so sure that the money is going to be there to do everything that we want to do this year. So instead of, okay, I will, the truth is Mr. Museri has that stuff already on his computer. The forecast for the hiring. So we have that. That's not that difficult.
Now you're just gonna add in your revenues, you have small history here. By the time next budget season rolls around, you'll have new
Yes,
information.
yes, but that's farther than 3 months away.
Not too much farther away
Well,
than that, that's pretty close.
Okay.
The only reason why I'm bringing it up now is I just want to make sure that we give you what you need to stay on track. Because if things are running in behind financially, doesn't mean we should vector off the plan that we have in place.
We've actually
We should at
slowed,
least have a discussion about how we're
Well,
going to.
we've slowed it
that was the
down,
game
but
plan.
still-
The game plan is to slow down,
we'll slow down,
not speed
but,
up.
but with the hope that within 3 years, you'll have
The full staff.
full staff.
Well, if things go as planned, within 18 months, we'll have 2 paramedics on every group without hiring an extra guy. And then we can hire an extra guy and make sure we have plenty of money to do it.
Sounds good.
So I think we'd be looking to see that.
Right.
Well, it's happening right now.
There's nothing wrong with 3 months sitting down and
Okay.
just making sure we're on track. Just, because I don't want to get to the budget cycle and then miss it.
Well, I don't think we're
Okay.
going to miss it.
Okay.
Where are they attending their school and how much is it costing per man?
North Reading, and
So
I
it is being
believe-
done in-house?
Yes, yes.
It's about 7,500, I think I got.
It's about 10 grand a guy. That's what we budgeted for. That's what it's budgeted for.
Bill, the plan of doing it in-house required some additional departments to
Correct.
participate.
Yeah,
Is that
I've
still
not
on
been
target?
involved in any of that. I believe the company itself is handling
The
the
company's, yeah,
applications.
okay.
Has nothing to do
I
with
think they
us.
have enough.
Yeah, the class is definitely moving forward. I know that we have 3 guys definitely that have already been accepted, and I'm not sure about a 4th, but there's still time.
This is good.
It is good.
It's very good, and I'm happy that, the men are getting on board with it too, because
Yep,
it's a win-win for everybody. It's great.
it is. Any other questions?
Anything else? Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 8, FY13 budget adjustments. I believe that's where we're at with this mix-up of the schedule.
Page 87. These are the amounts that have been identified early in the process that we need to look at for budget amendments going forward. We listed them out. I'm sure we'll have a lengthy discussion about them. We've already talked about things like the police cruisers and the armored vests, which are shown here. There's some other things that we've talked about, such as training associated with IT for our new systems that are coming online. And a couple of these items are deferrals from the Springtown meeting back in June. For example, the Recreation Department had originally submitted a request of $21,500 to supplement a shortfall in their budget last year. I understand that they're seeking that amount of money, which would be transferred from the general fund to supplement their budget this year.
Why is it TBD then?
What's that?
And why is it TBD?
Oh, because there's an additional amount that they're also identifying that they need for this fiscal year. So there's a $21,500 shortfall from last fiscal year, which they want to make themselves whole for in their enterprise fund. Michael, there's also an additional amount of money, which is TBD, that they've yet to identify for this fiscal year.
So, excuse me, this was the special town meeting action that we weren't able to take?
Correct.
So we had already endorsed the supplemental recreation.
Yeah, we were going to transfer $21,518 from free cash.
Right.
It was to be going to the Recreation Department. There were various assorted amounts that it was going toward, but there's also a potential amount that they're seeking for this fiscal year, and that's why it's been listed as a TBD.
I thought the warrant articles was 21,579.
21,518. Yeah.
Well, how much more are they looking for, though? Because that wasn't, I mean, if we had done this at the special town meeting, we wouldn't be talking about anything additional.
No, that's not true.
There's additional piece there.
There's an additional piece that's being worked through right now, and that's why we're saying it's TBD. We know the 21,518. There's an additional piece that's being worked on right now through
Yeah, but
Recreation.
I don't recall any
What's it
discussion
for?
about it.
Nor, there wasn't.
Okay.
There wasn't.
They need to amend their budget to bring their actuals in line with their budget. They've over budgeted their revenues. They need to adjust their revenues. They also need to adjust their expenditures and between salaries and expenses. So they program some funds in expenses that really got paid out of salaries. And so they need to, do some budget amendments with.
Is that because we didn't give them this money?
No.
No, it's completely separate. Matter of fact, The 21,518, if you look at it from an accounting standpoint, is unnecessary. The only
There's
thing
no
it would do is it would supplement their budget. Conceivably, the end of the year with that as a balance, and it would be considered part of their retained earnings
Right.
in June of 2013.
Mhm.
Right.
That's all the 21,518 is going to do for them at this point, is supplement their retained earnings 11 months from now.
They ended FY12, if you looked at it, they had a budget deficit, but they have a fund balance. They have retained earnings, they have cash on hand. It was just for the reason that they overspent on their expense budget. And if we had done the budget amendment, they still, might have just gotten by with that at June town meeting. So by doing it now, it has no effect on FY12, so it's.
So FY12 is not in balance for them.
They're not going to have a deficit. They have a budget to actual deficit. If you look, they overspent their expense budget.
But they're spending this, so they're spending their retained earnings now.
Yeah.
Or their enterprise fund is paying.
a small amount of it, not the whole amount, because everything, even if they got the 21,000 at special town meeting in June, there's just like free cash. There's other things that come into the calculation of retained earnings. So their retained earnings wouldn't be higher by that 21,000. They may have been higher by 7,000, 8,000, depending on, what other, if they had any warrants payable out there, different things like that we take into account. So really, it's not going to affect them that much.
And I guess I'm missing I have a disconnect here as far as the additional revenues they're looking for. Is it for the current fiscal year?
Mm-hmm.
So already,
They need to amend their budget, adjust it, and adjust their expenses to be in line with their revenues that they expect to bring in. Their revenues are down a little, so they need to adjust those. So we've been meeting with Recreation. We're going to meet with them again tomorrow morning to nail down exactly what their budget should look like for 13. So they don't run into this issue at June town meeting like we had last year. Being the first year in the enterprise fund, it was a learning curve for them. So, now they know how to deal with it, and we're helping them along the way. But really, the 21,000 is irrelevant at this time.
irrelevant other than it'll increase their balance.
Correct.
Right.
But we're committed to doing it, because we already.
What we said,
committed to it.
we wanted to carry it forward, as we said, the original intent was we want to carry forward those items that didn't get addressed at June town meeting. In that regard, we want to keep it there for discussion going forward in terms of whether we do it or not. And as we get further along, we'll have a number that'll be firmed up. But we are carrying that number forward because the commission has come to me and asked that we carry that number forward. Doesn't necessarily mean that Liz and I recommend it, but we're carrying it forward because that's what we are obligated and said we would commit to.
And I just want to make it clear that it doesn't have any effect on the retained earnings for FY12. FY12 is closed,
Right.
so
Right.
it's just so
No,
everyone.
but it will for FY13 at the end of the.
As long as they,
Well, it's money that, it's money that will be available, so if it wasn't committed and wasn't given,
Mhm.
that's $21,000 that they don't have retained earnings to
Right.
help cover their costs.
right.
Right.
So as long as they, watch their budget and don't overspend by that, then we'll be good.
It's okay, so the revenue projections for the current fiscal year are overstated, it appears to be at this
Yes.
point.
Mhm.
And then their expenses have increased?
They need to we have to decrease them in accordance to the revenues.
So just to balance it out. And what's the roundabout figure here?
We're not sure. They're looking at their programs, the programs that they've run so far through FY13 and what they're going to do, so.
Yeah, they're only 2 months into the year.
Right, but they've already had a good amount of programs being
Right.
the summer.
Yeah, summertime, right,
Probably the
right,
biggest
it's busy
time.
time, yeah, right.
So, that they're gonna look at that and take into account the expenses with that, the revenue they collected, so.
Okay, so I guess we'll be talking a little bit.
Yeah, we'll have additional discussion. Do you want me to go through these things one by one with you?
I think that'd be a good idea.
Veterans, the purpose of that is a salary review was done. It was something I had committed to when the budget was presented by the veterans agent. This amount recognizes the fact that there was a salary review and a salary is consistent with what I feel is fair for the position. The increase was awarded in last fiscal year, however, the monies were not programmed or budgeted because it took place after town meeting, and that's the reason why these monies are being requested again. Same,
Excuse me, at what rate are we currently paying the individual? At the
you
higher
want-
rate without the committed funds, or? We've gotten that situation before.
Right.
Right,
Right. We've committed that we're paying the veterans agent based upon the salary that was appropriated at town meeting.
Which
so that's what we're
factors
paying.
in this amount right here.
Just a higher amount.
What's that?
It factors in this amount right
Correct.
here.
It factors in this amount of money.
She's already being paid at the higher
Correct.
rate.
Right.
Correct. And failure to get this amount of money at town meeting will necessitate a transfer from the salary pool. We prefer to do it this way, be as transparent in the process as possible.
We also left very little room in the salary pool this year. When we were doing our budget, we only left what we knew about, so.
The
I
Hillview.
probably should have asked this a long time ago, or seen it a long time ago, but what's that percent increase from what she was receiving to what she's now
I don't
receiving?
recall the particular percentages, we can get that to you, but it was done after a comparative study of what we considered to be a fair salary for the position. So it was outside of what we would consider to be a normal merit increase. It was something that was done, that we looked at what her position was worth versus what other positions are worth throughout the state. So it was a salary analysis that was done. We don't do it very often, but we do when we feel that we haven't kept up with what we consider to be fair market for the position. And that's what this reflects.
It's in excess of that.
Right, that's what I'm thinking too.
Excuse me, but was this presented, I don't recall, was this number, is this new to us, or was this at the special town meeting? This was new.
No,
this
this
is
was
new to
not a
us.
special town meeting.
Right, this is new to us.
This is new.
I remember her budget presentation, she came in with a crazy, well,
Well, it's really higher than this.
an excessive
Yeah.
number she was looking for as a salary increase.
Right.
I don't recall any discussion on what the increase she was going to receive. Shame on me for not catching it, or whatever you proposed.
No, what I committed to at that time is that I would do a salary review.
Right. That's what
And that's what I committed to in the meeting, and that's what this reflects.
We approved her old salary with the expectation he would have some discussion with
I
her
just-
into a salary
I just-
adjustment.
Correct.
I just think,
And he's decided on giving her $5,834.
I just think a double-digit increase on anyone is extreme.
Well, something, you have to look at what the position is worth, and you have to compare it to someone who may be a secretary in a position and not a department head who's earning equal or more dollars than this individual. And in terms of fairness, I evaluated that and I determined that this amount was fairly representative for what her position deserves.
Hillview,
Certainly is good at her job.
That's not,
I know.
it's not the issue. I don't know how you can look other
Well,
employees
I
in the
don't know how it
face
was,
and
I don't know how it was determined, so.
give one employee over a 10% increase.
Perhaps, but I can assure you that the number that this individual gets per year is on the very low end, and it's in line with a clerical position, and I consider this position worth more than a clerical position. I think it provides more valuable services to the community.
Next item?
Hillview, this is reflective of a merit increase that the individual received after town meeting. So the amount is simply what the increment is going forward, and we need to budget for that out of the Hillview account.
I'd just like to note on that, now with hearing the discussion of tonight's Hillview, they might have to, amend their budget in other ways, depending on if they do the air conditioning system or whatnot. We might have to just, again, it's an enterprise fund, so you need to adjust their budget if they're gonna overspend in one area.
They're definitely not gonna overspend. They're gonna borrow.
Last year, they came close, so we need to just monitor it, is what I'm saying.
IT is $5,000. That's for training to our employees so that they're apprised as we begin the transition for new desktop units that have upgraded versions of Windows and Microsoft Outlook, that we provide our employees with an appropriate level of training so that they know how to use the new machines that are put in front of them. And I can assure you it's a challenge that unless these employees receive training, they will not be able to utilize these systems effectively.
So this is for 2 employees to get training?
Oh, no. We've actually gone ahead and got quotes for off-site training, and the off-site training for a full day can be under $200 per employee. So this could potentially train upwards of 25 employees over the course of the year. We've done in-house training before. We've brought someone in. I'm debating between doing that and sending people out. I think it's actually easier to send people out. I think they get more out of it as a day out of the classroom. There are programs in Nashua and in Waltham that I've investigated that, again, we would receive the state contract price. It's $193 per employee for a full 8-hour day of training. I think it's well worth it, and it's small dollars that we would pay to be able to accomplish that.
Yeah, they have the technology right there.
The technology is there.
It's
The
off-site.
employees are away from their office. They're just more effective in terms of being interrupted every hour throughout the course of the day. So that's what this represents. Any questions about IT?
No.
Police armor vests, as Liz had explained to the board previously, this is the amount that, although a significant portion of our armored vest is covered through the grant program, this is the amount that is not covered, $3,377. We think it's an appropriate use of funds.
How much was the total cost of the vest? Do we know?
I believe it was around 10,000. So they are using, they have about 7,000. I'll have that number in one moment.
Okay. Thank you.
While Liz is looking up the number of the police cruisers is the amount that Chief Murphy and Lieutenant Romeo had proposed to the board last week. We're doing it in the form of a budget amendment. That's where it'll be inserted.
And going forward, Chief will have this amount in his operating budget.
Annually programmed in its operating budget beginning June of next year.
The cost of each vest is $805, and there's an additional cost of $156. So they had a balance in their grant fund of $3,100. The state matches that, and then to purchase 8 vests, the department would have to provide the difference. So that's where they're requesting the $3,377.
Oh, okay.
So they get about $6,200 from the feds and the state combined, because the state matches the federal share. So, and how many vests they're buying? I believe it's 4 additional vests that they're buying with this money.
Thank you.
Fire department, A and B are items that were deferred from the June town meeting. A is returning the money back into the ambulance reserve account, $52,000. That was the amount that we had previously set aside for training, and it was not used in last fiscal year. So what we want to do is we want to transfer those monies back to the ambulance reserve account. The amount for paramedic stipend, which is the tuition, the stipend while the paramedics, firefighters are being trained, is $32,000. As you had indicated in the presentation from the fire chief this evening, those monies would be earmarked and paid for out of ALS revenues that have been received to date. So that is one of the sources of funds that's being proposed here, is to utilize those ALS revenues to in fact supplement the fire department budget for this amount of money. The items C through H total $31,000. They are items that were deferred from the June town meeting. You'll recall that we went
Can I
to...
stop you there?
Of course.
Going back to B, is that amount enough? Chief, if you send 4 guys, it's 10 grand. Don't you need $40,000?
This
No, I
is the
believe you said
stipend.
those are the stipends?
Mhm.
So they.
Stipends.
It says stipend for tuition.
No, it's stipends.
Yeah, it's stipends, so,
Okay.
what was the number?
32.
Yeah, that's totally.
It's while they're in school.
Okay.
Again, C through H, total $31,000. They are amounts that were taken out of the budget back in June and deferred. These are the small capital items that we wish to put back in.
The source of those funds?
We will probably look to fund it from free cash, Bob. DPW surveys, these are amounts that the Public Works Department had identified for surveys of roads in order to have them be accepted by the town. My recollection was, I think there were 4 roads that the DPW had proposed. Originally, they wanted to pay for it under the town road program. Liz and I didn't feel that that was an appropriate use of the funds, so what we've asked them to do is pull it out, identify it. This will ultimately add to the town's road mileage and will result in more Chapter 90 monies down the road, and is really the last step in the process of getting these roads accepted by town meeting. They'll likely be proposed for town meeting acceptance in June of 2013.
Greg? Greg?
Yes, Bob?
Shouldn't this money maybe come from the CPC and money they're holding on?
CPC has money in their sidewalk fund. And so that is for the purposes of extending and improving sidewalks throughout the community. So I'm not aware that there's an additional source of funds that's available.
Like bonds, construction bonds?
I think these are roads that have no longer, there's any bond money or security that's left on them. So these are roads that have been there for a long time and just haven't been accepted for whatever reason.
Okay.
Salary pool, vacation buybacks, this is an amount that was taken out of the budget in the spring. This is for our non-union employees, including department heads. I had indicated that I would present it and recommend it for funding at the October town meeting. I want to follow through on that commitment to the employees. Again, if funds are available. If funds are not available, we understand that they will not be able to buy back. Buybacks are 2 weeks per employee. They can buy back up to 2 weeks a year, and this represents the annual cost to the town.
Did we limit the amount of buybacks? Was it for department heads only?
Yeah.
That you did that?
Yes.
So that's not,
Actually, not non-union. Not everyone in the
Non-union.
non-union group is a department head, but that's what it represents, is the non-union group.
You can buy it for 2 weeks back.
Yeah, up to 2 weeks a year.
we're telling them they have to, we've told them that they have to, well, we're trying to get to the point where we're not paying more than 52 weeks in a year, correct?
Right.
Right, that was our goal.
That's our
Right.
goal. Our goal is not to pay anyone more than 52 weeks in a
Right.
year. And we're at 54, 56, depending upon contract. So, does that mess us up?
This bumps us up from, this would up that ante from 52 to 52 plus. Yes.
So, why do we want to do that?
I only want to propose it because it was a commitment I made to the employees that I would address it if we had sufficient funding going to October town meeting, and that's why it's on the list of potential items for your consideration.
Okay. Well, I think the employees have already been well prepared for getting paid 52 weeks in a 52-week year. And I think that's what one of our overall goals and strategies from a collective bargaining standpoint has been, right? And I know and recognize that a certain segment of our employees are being treated a little differently than others because of the collective bargaining agreements, but I don't think the goal has changed. And, so I think the board needs to take a serious look at whether or not we want to follow through with what we, and I think when we did this, it wasn't necessarily a contingent upon available funds.
Correct.
I think it was contingent, it wasn't contingent upon anything other than we don't want to pay any more than 52 weeks in a 52-week year.
We created collective bargaining agreements that we should live and die by. We have to honor them. And that's, I thought, the way we were gonna go forward, is we honor those collective bargaining agreements. This seems outside of that.
This agreement is not one of those, I believe.
There was no concession given in this agreement to eliminating vacation buyback, just so you know. So this is to be consistent, with the agreement that we have with our employees. The only reason why we did not fund it is because it was an issue of money. It was an issue of money. So this is to become consistent with our agreement going forward.
So what CBAs does this affect?
Non-union, union.
You know, I know you. So
Nice.
it's
Non-union,
pretty much
union.
department heads, primarily
Correct.
department heads, and
Correct.
a few other stragglers, right?
Yeah, there's not many, but most of them are your department heads, your higher paid employees.
And they've already been put on notice and are well aware that they don't have any carryovers.
Oh, yeah. Yep, they've already been put on notice, and I continually engage in a dialogue with them relative to how we would handle this. And again, I'm following through on my commitment that I made to the employees as the town administrator, that I would put it on for your consideration. Again, it remains to be seen whether we actually have the revenue to be able to fund it, but I think it's important to at least have a discussion about it.
Tonight?
No,
Oh.
no, because you're not voting your recommendations this evening.
Okay.
And then the last item is the assessing reval. This represents a cost of $110,000, and we would look to fund all or a portion of that from the overlay account. So we have an amount, remember, we had $70,000 earmarked in overlay surplus that we're going to be using to cure our snow deficit. In this instance, what we would do is we would, those funds are freed up, so we would use a portion or all of that to fund our cost of the triennial revaluation of all real property in town.
Mr. O'Leary?
Conservation. Where are we at in relation to adequate funding for that particular board and that particular position?
We're all set. We're all
Yeah, I
set.
thought we put the money back.
We put some money in there.
No, we put enough back into the general fund to fund the agent position as the Conservation Commission had recommended. So it was originally supplemented, or originally paid for entirely through the revolving fund, and as a result.
Right, they ran out of money.
Yep, and
Right.
we ensured that would not happen, so the
Right,
Conservation.
but as a result of what they've said at this point, and again, they were in a panic mode, obviously, at that
Sure.
particular point in time. The level of services that are available through that office right now are minimal, as far as maybe once a week, someone can come in and talk to somebody.
We funded the amount exactly as the Conservation Commission had recommended when, I think it was Laurie Mitchner came in and made a presentation to the board.
Okay.
She asked for an amount of money, and that's the amount that we actually funded from the general fund to
All
go
right.
toward that
Can we
position.
double check with them?
Sure.
And see where how they're faring right now
Mhm.
in relation to meeting the community's needs, and see if there's a supplement that needs to be either to the salary budget or even to the hire a consultant or something.
They had requested 16,000 in their budget. We funded 16,000, and they've only spent 1,400 of the 16,000 to date.
Okay, but if you could.
I can check with them.
If you could check with them again, just to make sure. Again, I don't know what they're anticipating. And if they're fine, that's great.
Sure.
If they're not, this is the time to supplement it, because I know because the previous years, we had spent significantly more than $16,000 or $18,000.
Yes.
And even then, that was part-time. So, and then how's their revenue stream? Probably minimal still, right? Because not much activity in relation to developers coming in and,
I can check that for you.
okay.
So, Ms. Erie?
Two things seem to be missing here, Greg.
Mhm.
The snow and ice, and how we're dealing with that.
We're dealing with it by adding the number to the recap sheet.
To the what?
Recap sheet. We do not need any action of town meeting to cure the snow deficit from last year.
So it's going on the recap sheet as a hit for this 2014?
Yeah, we had a snow deficit of $70,000 from last fiscal year. And so what we're doing is we're adding it onto the recap sheet. You'll recall that we reserve unspent revenues every fiscal year to cover the prior year's snow deficit. So we'll tap into that for the amount of about $70,000.
So we'll
No
actually
action of town.
still have a surplus in there?
Correct, and no action of town meeting is needed.
And that surplus of revenue, you're gonna look, or taxation, you're going to apply to some of these items?
No, we would apply it toward our reserves. So we would actually vote to appropriate it toward our reserve.
Which gets into the debt stabilization fund.
Yeah,
the capital
that's where we think it would go.
stabilization fund. We had a plan to put money in. We've actually used a fair amount for the June town meeting, for this fiscal year's budget. And we had a plan that would have left us with more than essentially what we put in. And where is that? What's the plan there? Is that what you're talking about, number one, to be determined? Or is that something else?
No, that's,
No.
that's to amend the debt service
No,
budget
no.
due to the borrowing that we had
Okay,
on
all right,
6/18,
okay.
the various items.
Okay, so where are we with that?
The
What's
debt
the plan?
stabilization fund?
Yeah.
We're formulating our plan, but as you know, we had anticipated transferring money from general insurance, pensions and benefits, cell tower receipts, supplemental state aid, sale of town-owned land, and free cash. The total was $859,278. Of the amounts that I've indicated to you, the amounts that remain today, all the other amounts would translate through free cash. So when free cash, the balance sheet is completed and free cash is certified, those amounts are in the free cash number. But the two amounts that aren't are the cell tower receipts reserved in the amount of $200,000 and the sale of town-owned land in the amount of $11,690. What we would look to do is to supplement the debt capital stabilization fund through transfers of free cash, or, as I mentioned to you, by utilizing the additional unspent capacity that was reserved to deal with the fiscal 2012 snow deficit. So there's an amount that's there also to appropriate that amount to the debt capital stabilization fund.
When we're ready to vote on this, will we have a recommendation for that?
Yeah, because the thing that's missing is the certified free cash number. So we've made plans. What I'm saying to you is, we do have, the cell tower receipts reserve did carry through. We're also anticipating additional FEMA reimbursements of about $81,000. I know that Liz and the treasurer have been placed on notice about it. Those amounts were incurred for last October. So that was the snowstorm that came in. So when those monies are received, those monies will be considered potentially available revenue, and those amounts can actually be voted toward the debt capital stabilization fund also.
Two questions. We're gonna try to allocate some money to the other post-employment benefit fund?
Sure. We had indicated that we wish to do that at this coming town meeting, and we certainly want to continue that commitment.
Do we have a number, or are we?
No, not right now, but we would want to, over the next few weeks, look and see what we have available once free cash is certified, and make a commitment to funding that at that time.
What's the best way of doing that, Liz? I'm sorry, Michael, I just wonder what's the best way of setting it up.
Which piece?
What did Mike's talking about?
OPEB.
OPEB, of transferring money. We've already, over the past 2 years, we've transferred small amounts of funds in. So,
Is it interest bearing? Is it doing anything for us, or is it just sitting there doing it?
it earns minimal interest. You know,
Not much in there.
right. There's, I believe, I want to say 40,000.
All we need is a few extra
Yeah,
zeros
I
on
think
that,
I think that's pretty accurate.
Mike, all we need is a few extra zeros on that 40, we'll be even.
We'll be good.
We were about 40 million, 40,000.
I'll
Long
get back to you,
go.
but I think Mr. Keller had something to say on that.
Is there going to be a recommendation for an appropriation to the stabilization fund?
Yes.
Free cash when that's certified?
Yes, you recall from Springtown meeting, we committed a small amount going into the stabilization fund. The balance was approximately $1.8 million, Don.
Right.
So we've been looking to, so to speak, increase the amount that we want to have to go toward the stabilization fund. We're aware of that, and we do want to commit funds to that going forward at October town meeting. We just can't state exactly what that amount will be. And just again,
I would hope that if free cash is in at substantial number, that a relatively substantial amount is earmarked for stabilization.
To get back to the OPEB, there's 41,000 in there, so.
So the release, going back to the assessing.
Yes.
You say the release of the overlay surplus.
Yes.
So what's the total surplus we have now? Well,
The Board of Assessors would have to
They-
let us
we
know
don't
what their.
have a release at this point, because what had happened was, when town meeting didn't take place,
yeah,
the Board of Assessors rescinded their vote to release.
okay.
So they will have to revote an amount to release, but it will at least be the $70,000 plus any additional amount that they've identified as being available. The number can only go up, it can't go down.
They just need to go through
Alright.
their potential
That-
cases.
That's why I wasn't sure.
Yep, they just have to look through their potential cases and make sure that they have enough in order to cover it.
Thank you.
But again, the number will only go up at this point. Any other questions on budget amendment actions for town meeting?
What's the anticipated time to be reviewing this for? I know it's dependent on free cash.
We plan on submitting the balance sheet, by Labor Day.
When do we have to go to print?
The board signs the warrant on the 4th, and you have a meeting, I believe, on the 17th, where you will vote your recommendations. So right after that meeting on the 17th, we go to print.
What are you doing?
So free cash should be certified by the 17th. It should be certified the week of Labor Day, depending on how many they receive, so.
So these numbers would be in the warrant,
Yeah, that's the goal.
printed in the warrant, but not necessarily the funding sources.
What we try to do is we try to include the numbers in the narrative and the description of the article. Once we start inserting dollar amounts in the warrant, then we start getting locked in. And other than the capital plan, our procedure has been that we, on warrant articles, we typically don't list them. What we'll do is we'll list them in the summary description, but we won't include them within the body of the article.
Anybody else? No? Thank you. Item 9, review October town meeting articles.
We go to the one in the supplement.
That should be the supplement one, right?
Page 2 of the supplement. First is here and act on reports of town committees and officers. Number 2 would be the capital improvement plan that's recommended by the Board of Selectmen. And again, that amount would be consistent with what the board votes. Funding for the fiscal year 2014 property reval, we've just addressed that. Prior year bills, we always include an amount on the warrant for the purposes of funding prior year bills. You'll recall that that was one of the items that was in our annual town meeting back in June, so we don't have any carryovers in terms of prior year bills. And typically what they are is they involve medical bills for our public safety personnel. And as those come in, we identify them, but this is in here at this point as a placeholder. Article number 5 is a request of the police department to create a local general bylaw, and it's concerning fingerprint submission requirement for license applicants. So these would be things such as solicitors, hawkers and peddlers, that type of license permit, that the law allows the community to set up a local bylaw that would require those individuals to undergo fingerprinting, and this would have to be adopted in the form of a bylaw. And to ensure, again, public safety, that when you have individuals out in the community doing door-to-door solicitation, you want to make sure that they're upstanding citizens, and they're not going to do it for the purposes of engaging in criminal activity. And Chief Murphy will be happy to come before the board at a later date and discuss this proposal at length with the board. Number 6 would be to appropriate money to the Debt Capital Stabilization Fund. 7 would be to appropriate money to the town's general stabilization fund. 8 would be to appropriate money for the other post-employment benefits fund. 9 would be to amend the fiscal 2013 operating budget. 10 would be to fund the forest management plan. I think as I had previously indicated to the board, the forestry committee wishes to hire a forester to come in and evaluate all town properties for potential timber harvesting activity, and this would cost approximately $5,000. Article 11 is acquisition of land. It's a placeholder that's been submitted by the board, as is Article 12 for potential acquisition of land. These are both placeholders that we've got on here at this point, pending further information that may be provided back to us. 13 would be the request submitted by the school department for repairs to the Little School retaining wall. 14 would be improvements that come from the indoor air quality study that was conducted by the Department of Public Health. It's a placeholder. 15 would be funding for town road survey services. We talked about that a few minutes ago. 16 would be funding for water, wastewater, and stormwater. It's a request of the DPW. There is no dollar amount associated with it at this point. 17 would be for funding parking lot expansion at the building on the common.
I thought Dick said he had enough in his budget to handle it.
He did, and
Okay.
we're just carrying it
Yep.
at this point, so we don't lose track of it.
But, okay.
Yeah, the list hopefully will get smaller as we go along, not larger.
Yep.
The next one is the CPC requesting to transfer money from their salary to their GIS. The GIS is consolidated under the DPW. You'll also remember that the CPC has not only their planning administrator position, but there was also an assistant position, which was fully funded. I do not envision the CPC running the GIS program at this point going forward, so I'm a little bit unsure in terms of what the request is for. Suggest that the board would have a meeting with them to discuss this issue. And the last article is a request by the Board of Health to create a broadly worded revolving fund.
Is this a recent request, or is this the rehash request?
This is, you remember the request that was written for the last town meeting was narrowly worded?
Yes.
And it was narrowly worded. What was submitted for the warrant was narrowly worded. This article is consistent with the presentation that was made to the board. The presentation was that there would be an all-encompassing fund to supplement activities and programs conducted by the Board of Health. And that's what exactly this article would be
I think it was at our suggestion that the health agent embraced the idea of passing this over till October
Right.
to address it appropriately so that it might be able to encompass several of their programs.
I had the pleasure, shall I say, to attend a recent Finance Committee meeting. Mr. Fear attended, and he tried to explain what he was looking to do. I think he received an education that evening that what he was looking to do under this article cannot be accomplished according to state statute. I think he's taking a further look at it. And I think as a result of that discussion at the Finance Committee meeting, he may be looking for a budget adjustment next year versus this article. So this may be one that goes away.
Okay.
Mr. Messeri.
I just suggest that the order of these articles, if this is in fact your intended order,
It's not.
be
Not at all.
rearranged.
Not at all.
Put the operating budget before the...
No, not at all. This
Sort of
is
stabilization.
just how they came into the office, and today was the deadline for submission of articles. There were no petition articles received. Typically, we wait until 4 o'clock to see if any have come in, and there were none.
So is we're gonna vote on any of these tonight, or?
Okay.
No, this is just This
the
is
list.
just where we're at
This
so
is the
far.
list where we're at in terms of what the articles are.
No, I know, but there's some that we gotta really have them on.
I think this is the
No,
first
some of them
look at these articles in terms
Yeah.
of what's been submitted. I think there'll be further discussion probably at our next meeting in terms of information related to them, and then we vote on the 17th.
Yeah, we'll be actually putting together a draft warrant, and we'll be posting it up onto Dropbox so that you can have an opportunity to look at it. These are merely just a bullet listing of the articles. We need to work our way through the exact language on each. And certainly the board has a right to take them off as you decide, or not put them on at all.
Abby?
When do you think you'll have a draft warrant available?
How about 2 weeks, Abby?
Could you give me a date?
Sure.
But you get it on or about September 4th.
Yeah, in time for, right after Labor Day.
Oh, okay.
That Tuesday, we have a meeting. That work for you?
Does it make any difference?
Of course.
Don't think so. Great, thanks. Well, execution.
Thank you, Greg. I think we're back to item 5, followed by item 6. Mr. Messeri had proposed postponing the hearing as well as the discussion of the sale of additional town land to a further meeting. Do I have a motion?
Let's see, which is number 5? What's number 6? Number 6?
Additional
Oh,
It's related.
yeah, it's,
You take it.
it's actually number 5 is the one we have to worry about because we have a public hearing.
Correct.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move to continue the public hearing on consideration of town-owned land until Tuesday, September the 4th, at, give me a time, whatever you want to do it,
Why don't we make it 8 o'clock?
8 PM,
May work best.
8 PM.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
And then number
Item
6,
six.
Mr. Chairman, you can just defer it as chair until after discussion of the other one.
Exactly, Mr. O'Leary had said. After 8 PM on September 4th.
Second?
Do we need a motion? Greg, I think we're at your town administrator's report. Is there? Yeah.
Is that in the,
No, it was not. I scrambled to cobble together again. You've received the good news on the governor including money in the budget on the transportation bond issue. I won't get into that. The DPW has provided a copy of the Chestnut New Street Traffic Engineering Services RFP. I've looked at it. It's complete, but I've put a copy in the Dropbox. I've also spoken with the Public Works Director, who's indicated that the RFP has been mailed out to 6 engineering firms. And the anticipated date, which responses are due back to us, is September 14th.
So how does that work? We get to pick who we wish to submit it to? Or it just doesn't go out broadly?
It does not require advertisement. It's interesting, one of the gaps in the bid law is for professional engineering services related to public works construction. So what we typically do is we'll do a competitive process. We'll issue proposals, but there's no formal advertising requirement. We don't need to go through a formal bid process. All we need to do is encourage fair competition, and that's what the intent of this is to mail it out to firms that we know are capable of doing this work, and that's what we've done. If someone else makes an inquiry, we're more than happy to provide them with a copy of it also, but at least we've identified 6 firms at this point.
And you said bids are due, is it the 14th? Is that what you said?
Yes, it's due on the 14th.
What's it under, Greg, on the Dropbox?
If you go to Chestnut Street Truck Exclusion, you'll find that it's loaded in there. And so there are 2 different RFPs. The first is for the traffic calming measures, including the truck exclusion alternatives. And the second one is to come up with recommendations for redesign of the intersection of Chestnut, New, and Havel. which was a concern that was expressed at the board's public meeting. If you can't find it for any reason, let me know.
I think you sent it by way of an email as well.
I sent it in the form of an email, but I also posted it up to Dropbox because I figured you'd want to take a look at it there.
Thanks.
The email link identifies various supporting documents, including the traffic counts, the studies that have been done through the police department and such. That's the reason why I sent you the link, because it brings you back to those documents.
It's
It's in documents.
board members.
Oh,
It's in
okay.
Dropbox.
Thank you.
Documents, open up documents, and there's Chestnut Street truck exclusion.
Thank you.
Can I raise an issue on rhetorical questions here in relation to this whole issue, or now series of issues relating to Chestnut Street, New Street, Haverhill Street. I've almost come to the conclusion where we're not going to be able to conclude much of anything other than enforcement, additional enforcement by the police department is going to help curtail the activity that's taking place there. We certainly don't have a consensus among the residents on Chestnut Street anymore. We thought we did and we don't, as to traffic calming issues and any other attempts that we've made. I mean, we thought we had a solution, and we opened up a Pandora's box, and so now we've got the Haverhill Street residents all up in arms. Maybe we should follow through with this engineering study. How much money did we have set aside here? $25,000. To me, the best thing's going to come out of that maybe is to take a look at that intersection at Haverhill and Chestnut Street. Not that we were planning on doing that, but it's as a result of all the discussions that we've had in the neighborhoods engaging the board here. But, in reflecting, I mean, in our efforts to attempt to address some concerns in a neighborhood, sometimes we get to a point where we just can't successfully do it. I'm pretty close to being at that point. That being said, how much more money are we going to expend to address these needs? Now, if we're expanding our scope in an effort to address another issue which has come to light because of what our previous action, then okay, let's make a conscious decision to move forward on that. But I don't know. I don't see any solution in sight. I don't know about anybody else, but I just don't at this point, other than asking our police department to step up the enforcement, build a reputation that the community, polices this area pretty heavily. The truckers are going to have to slow down, and again, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, complete it.
Yeah, that's good.
Good. So we're going to cut them off. No. I guess enforcement of what? Because I think what we've heard from the neighborhood on Chestnut and New Street, it's not speed, it's volume of truck traffic. I think when it got down to it, that's what it was. So what is the police department going to enforce? If it was a speed issue, I would agree with you. Okay, the police can enforce that. So I guess going forward, the traffic engineer, I guess it finally gets us to a point where we have a professional in this area that is going to issue a report. He may have some recommendations, he may not have any. I don't know. We haven't had that guidance up to this point in time. We sort of come to various decisions that we thought would help, and like you said, have opened up Pandora's box, awoken other
sometimes we
neighbors.
just can't satisfy.
But we're not going to know until it gets done. So I would agree with you. Enforcement of what, though? It's not.
I think the big thing is the traffic volume. I mean, the truck volume. But speed is still an issue in that neighborhood. There's no doubt about it. It has been for years. So maybe that traffic calming, through enforcement, assists the situation in making it better. It isn't necessarily, or maybe it will curtail some of the truck traffic if we have some heavy enforcement there, when they don't want to be bothered with our police department. But at least it slows them down. And it'd have to be different intervals during time of day, But I guess, we're starting to throw some more good money at looking at things, and what are we really looking to glean from it, and what are we really going to get out of it, and do we really see a solution to what our original intent was,
I hope we get there. I think at this point it's been demonstrated there's a need for something down there. What that is, I don't know. I hope we get to a point that we can, we're not gonna satisfy everyone.
That's for sure.
Hopefully we get to a point that we can do something that satisfies most that live in and around that area.
And I don't know if it's more of an issue of satisfying people than trying to at least resolve the problem to the best of our ability. So, I mean, you may be able to, you may get some recommendations for solving the problem or lessening the problem, and you still might not make anybody happy, but at least you did your due diligence.
You know, we gotta do something. I mean, even this morning, I got an email from one of the residents at 6:20 this morning, massive dump truck with a trailer with a big excavator on it. He was leaving his driveway right by the house. Pretty good clip, I'm not sure if he was speeding or not, but it was very loud, and he drove right to Milton Cat. And now that Milton Cat's open, you're having a lot more vehicles and big excavators on trailers going by there now. So it's just added to the whole problem. So I really look forward to a traffic engineer giving us some kind of guidance, rather than just say, maybe there's nothing we can do. I think we gotta see this through now.
That could be one of the things he
You
suggests
may,
too. You can't
and that's
do
right, I'd
anything.
rather get it from a professional, and then it's easy for us to look at the resident's eye and say, we did what we could do. But I don't think we're there yet. I say we stay the course, that's for certain.
Bring it up. You know, thinking out loud. You know,
But I
so
would
that's
Yeah,
what
ask
I-
that I
Personally, you know, it seems like we've spent a ton of our own time and energy. We've had a number of hearings. We clearly have determined that different neighbors have different issues. I'm not sure that spending the money is going to put us in any better position short of being able to tell the neighbors we can't do anything. The one time that the police department got the state police out there, I mean, this isn't something you can't do every week, but they wrote up a number of citations that it wasn't for speeding, it was mostly for trucks that
Equipment
didn't meet
Yeah, overweight, or equipment
meet
issues and
inspection
overweight.
standards, and, you know, I mean, I suppose if you could do that on a regular basis, you would discourage a number of those vehicles not to go down that way. But other than that, I don't know. But I think you're right, we're almost caught in this thing where we've got to go to this point. But I think we have to make as a board a decision that we do this study and we'll take the recommendations, but we're not going to go off in any other ventures after that. If the recommendations are to put in the speed bumps, we put in the speed bumps, and if they're to file for truck exclusion, which I don't think we'll ever get. So I think that's a waste of energy. But if there's some other way of deterring the traffic, as much as I can't see, I don't think the money's well spent, but I don't think we have a choice, I guess is where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I think we, unfortunately, we butchered this whole thing.
What?
We butchered it. We really did. We did a number on it.
Again, all well intended.
Oh, yeah, I know. We tried our best.
We got caught up in it.
We haven't had the professional opinion given to us that we need, and I think this is what's going to get us here. And it may be, can't do anything, but it may throw out some ideas that we could do, and maybe they're affordable. That's the other issue. So, Mr. Prisco?
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm really disappointed that it's August 20th and we're finally getting this RFP out. For the record, I want it in the minutes. It's wrong, unprofessional. These residents, even though this is a tough issue, they've been waiting long enough. I would ask the chairman if you would have somebody reach out to these people, at least give them an idea of what's going on. I think we owe it to them, at least some kind of an update on how you do it. I'm not sure if you have all their email addresses, but I think we gotta find a way to get the information out that
Probably
they know.
three, the way it broke out, there were like 3 leaders of different factions. I think I could communicate with them.
I think it would
I was
be good
waiting
just
to
to
get-
let them know that the RFP finally went out, that we're expecting things back on the 14th, and that from there we'll be able to make some decisions.
And I was waiting to get to this point. And I think I expressed it last week that I was disappointed that it hadn't been completed.
Sure.
as of last week. But it's complete, it's out, so that's progress. Any comments?
That's it for my report.
Any new business? Mr. O'Leary?
I'm all set.
Sweet.
Actually, one thing I have to say is, Mr. Jones Senior is here today, is, I don't know if anybody saw in the transcript this past week that Representative had a perfect attendance, 5,490 since 1994. I worked at the State House for 6 years, and I can tell you, I don't know anybody who's ever had a perfect roll call, so congratulations, I'm very impressed.
Anything else? Anything? Anything else?
No.
Mr. Messina.
Just one thing I'm surprised that Craig didn't mention it, that we've sent an offer out, it's been accepted for an IT
That's terrific.
starting date, I think.
IT
is
person?
Right
2
after
weeks.
Labor Day, 2 weeks.
Everything's and we also filled a position in the town clerk's office.
Oh, great.
That was another position that we had open, which was a administrative assistant, grade 3. We're hoping that at some point, this person will be able to take on the responsibility for an assistant town clerk, which has been one of my goals for a number of years. So that person is also going to be coming on board in 2 weeks.
Very good. It's good news. Mr. Prisco.
I had 3 things, but I'll only bring up one, and
No,
I'll hold
no,
off
no,
on the
no,
other.
go ahead.
All these other towns around us seem to be having warnings and canceling soccer games related to Triple E, and Reading now, Middleton tonight just canceled all their sporting events. Is there an issue that we should be aware of in North Reading?
I can address it to a certain extent. I've had communications with Mr. Fair. He informs me that there's additional spraying going on in North Reading, in the areas that are close to bordering towns such as Reading and Linfield. So, in his opinion, it's being addressed. That's what I can add. I don't know if town administrator can add anything further on that issue.
No, but I will speak to Mr. Fair.
Maybe he wouldn't mind contacting some of the surrounding communities that have issued some of these warnings, just to get some of the feedback. Maybe they just have some knowledge that he's not aware of on some of the issues.
Fair enough.
And then maybe we can hear back on the 4th, or if you know something sooner.
He also indicated in the email that I received from him that he was going to put a public service announcement in the transcript. Hoping he gets
That
it
would
in
be
this
great.
week.
Well, just wanted, I'm sorry, any follow-up on the code red with our vendor again? Any more?
We saw an email from the chief.
That was just before our meeting last week.
Oh, it was before
Yeah.
the meeting last week.
Yeah.
I thought it was after the meeting last week.
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe you're right,
No, it was, and
That-
it
that-
sounded encouraging that he actually talked to somebody.
Well, it was a no, but then it was,
Then it was-
the chief followed up again, said, look at it again, but I don't know if there was any more.
Oh, I didn't.
And he got the impression from the email that he talked to somebody higher up that was like, no, I think we can do something to help you out. Unfortunately, we didn't catch him tonight, but maybe,
Yeah. If you could just follow up again, because I really don't want to let that go if we can.
I got
I
the
agree.
email.
Michael?
That's it, I'm done.
I have 2 items. An update on the school building project. At the present stage, the project's going through what's called a value engineering study. Essentially, at this process, the design stage is about 60% complete, but at this point in time, the architect, the CM at risk, and the project manager are looking at, along with secondary school building committee, looking at what features and what materials to go forward with, what to change as the process moves forward. As of the present time, the project is on time. Early to release packages are out. There are additional early to release packages that will be going out for items such as the foundation for the new high school. That is supposed to start in October. So that's the update as of last Tuesday evening. So I'm very encouraged by that meeting and the progress that's been undertaken so far.
Excuse me, just as far as the work starting time, I mean, there's some issues with the contractors that I know the police department addressed, but
There was an issue, I believe it's a week ago Sunday, in which there was one contractor up there, I believe, moving equipment out. Police, neighbors did make a complaint, the police went up, responded. All workers on site are aware of what the time, days of the week and timeframes are when work can and cannot be done up there.
Yeah, I just had some inquiries from the neighbors
That's been fully addressed.
this week.
On the second issue, I'm sure everyone is aware that we had an unfortunate incident that took place at our police station a week ago Monday, in which 2 young men who had been under arrest since last Saturday found their way out of the police station. This is due in part to human error, unfortunately, as well as in conjunction with a technical malfunction. The board this evening, along with the town administrator, visited the police station, got a tour of the cell block area by Chief Murphy. Chief Murphy has explained to us what actions that he and his department are taking to ensure that the community is safe and an incident such as this does not occur again. There were technical failures that happened to come about due to some of the equipment that led to these 2 young men being able to leave the building undetected by our police force, and those also are being addressed. But this board is confident in the police chief and the department as a whole that they will take any and all measures to ensure that this or any similar like incident does not take place again. Thank you.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.